You can hear me, don't you? Right. Hello, and welcome to another Delboy stream with my friend Denny. Hopefully you can hear us all okay. Had a bit of a technical issue there because I couldn't start the stream. The button wouldn't come up. But hopefully everybody knows what we're here for. We're going to be talking about, well, it's definitely Denny, say how much you like the Twilight Zone.
How much do I like the Twilight Zone? I bought each individual DVD for the whole series, which cost me a fortune. I bought all the Blu-ray sets, which has cost me a fortune. And basically, the Twilight Zone, it's by probably one of the best writers in the world, a genius writer by Rod Serling, who I got into him from when I watched Planet of the Apes, because everybody knows obviously the ending of that. He just blew me away. I wanted to find more stuff about Rod Serling, and then it went from there. And I bought the Night Gallery as well. Unfortunately, that did interfere with that, the studio executives, but it was Rod Serling. I wanted it, so yeah, that's how much I like the Twilight Zone. I spent a lot of money on it, basically.
Yeah, I've got a similar story. I mean, basically, I can't quite remember when I saw the Twilight Zone. If I look on the internet, I can't even find an exact UK start date other than it was after the fact of the American show. It was in the 60s. It was on ITV. I wasn't born then. But I think I know I saw Planet of the Apes first. And then I would have seen Twilight Zone episodes on TV. They would have been, I would have thought, on ITV, because the BBC's rerun of it is far too late. And I was definitely, I definitely didn't have satellite in the late 80s or early 80s. So it must have been late night. So I look at it from a point of view that I still saw him at a very early age. And I still hold by the fact that if you watch something at a very early age, it's very impressionable on you.
Yeah, very nostalgic.
Planet of the Apes, to me's ending was something then that I craved for. I looked for it in other programs. I looked for it in other films. It seemed very much like it was very difficult to find, and there was no internet. So basically, the Twilight Zone was it, and I think I crossed the fact that Planet of the Apes was written by Mr. Serling, as I call him, by the fact that I went to the library and found that out. So Mr. Serling then suddenly became my favorite author for a long period of time. So what interesting sort of like facts have you got to tell us, Denny, before we start going into the episodes? Tell me a little bit about your love of the Twilight Zone, what it is about the Twilight Zone, why you think black and white works better than color for the Twilight Zone, that sort of thing. Give us your impressions on why you think people of today and the youth should still watch the Twilight Zone, why it's still got relevance.
Well, sadly, I think, as you know, a lot of black and white TV, it's passed over by a lot of our, state channels like ITV, BBC. They're missing out on a rich tapestry of, stories that are just not available today. That are stories that we'll be discussing in, season 1. Well, they go all through all seasons, really. And this is like through the 80s and 90s, not so much the latest one that come out. But the early ones for me, the black and whites, it was more like Lost in Space when they done the originals. It's something you can't describe. It's like the film A Night to Remember. There's an atmosphere to them, a complete atmosphere that you can't get through colour episodes. I can't explain it. Don't ask me to. I can't explain it. There's just something magical about them, completely magical about them. But for me, the Twilight Zone, it was always the twist to the story. I loved because everything has an every story has an epilogue. Well, this sort of didn't. It sort of bypassed that. It was just like, there's your story, and you was always wondering through the story. It wasn't as simple as to, like a lot of productions that a lot of writers do. You seem to know the plot before it actually happens, and you can piece things together. Where Sterling's mind was concerned, and there was the writers Beaumont and Matheson, obviously other writers for the Twilight Zone. These people that could put a story forward, and you was now wiser to the fact until you come to the end. And obviously, we are going to talk about one of the stories, and one of the things that typifies that particular statement that I've just said is Third from the Sun. And the ending to that was, it just completely and utterly blew me away, because as you was watching it, you thought, oh, this is what's going to happen. And once at the end, once the punchline come, I should say, you just sat there and you thought, wow, I'd have never thought that. I'd have never thought that. It's just as I said, it's just the mind, the way the writers they've got now, and the black and white. Del, I can't explain it. The black and white was an era which, again, I can't explain, mate. It's just seeped in atmosphere that I don't think a lot of productions have got.
What about black and white?
In what?
Well, do you think it works better in black and white? Do you think people should not be afraid to watch it because it's black and white?
No, because the stories carry them forward. It was it was a part of our history, black and white television. It's like radio, from jumping from the radio to television. I
suppose I'm not wording it correctly. What I probably am getting at is that I've heard that a lot of people today, youth, will not watch black and white. They will only watch something that's in color. From my point of view, it's not about legacy that something's in black and white. For me, the Twilight Zone works better in black and white because it's about light and shadow. It's about dark. It's about brightness. It's all of those sort of things. In fact, actually, it works better in black and white. If I watch the color episodes, I turn around to them usually and say, this is a better program in black and white.
Yet saying that, I thought some of the 80s, that just worked on the level. Even the opening to the 80s, obviously different to what the originals were, but it by the Grateful Dead, and the imagery on there, the imagery was absolutely fantastic. I thought it was a fantastic update, but it was absolutely slated in its day. Why, I'll never know, but I'm a fan of it, and I love the stories.
Yeah. So I'm just got to do something on the channel for a moment. So apologies for that. I've just had a troller come in. Thank you very much, by the way, everybody, for sticking with us while I came in. Unfortunately, I have asked a question of Mr. Table and Chairs, who was in the room, who says the big baby was late. What he means by that, and of course got no answer. That's because that's one of the many trollers that I've been talking about. So sorry, I had to sort something like that out, because I don't want that sort of heckling going on through this. Especially when it was my mother that's not very well. That's the sort of person that I'm dealing with. So for me, the Twilight Zone works best in a black and white medium because it's all about light and shadow. In fact, it's actually in the scripts and so forth. The Twilight Zone worked for me on every sort of level, because although even my mother was said, you're watching science fiction, and science fiction is one of those niche things. I think it's actually more to do with drama It's drama in a sort of fantasy setting. It must have been incredibly difficult for Rod Serling to write a story about race in 1959 when segregation was there. It must have been very difficult to write a story about war when they've only just come out of war. It must have been very difficult to keep the heads of TV happy when all the sponsors were turning around and saying, we don't understand what the stories are all about. And that means that we're going to pull our sponsorship. All of those things were going on, and yet the stories are considered timeless. We're talking about things that are prominent today. And that will be a theme that you'll see probably running through all the episodes, I find. Just like you, Denny, I've bought it on videotape. I've bought it on DVD. I've got it on Blu-ray. I dare say 4K is coming around the corner because most, not all of the episodes were on film. There were certain ones which were not.
Second season, 6 episodes.
And as many will know when I'm talking about the Twilight, the Twilight Zone or anything, if something is on film, it has no resolution. So basically you can scan it and scan it and scan it in all sorts of different resolutions. 4K anyway is about color and saturation. Black and white still being a color, including all the shades in between, which is why it works on every medium out there. But is there anything that you want to talk about, Denny, in regards to season 1 compared to the other seasons? Was it a strong season? Did it hit the ground running? I mean, I've commented a little bit in regards to the fact that it had a rough season 1, in the fact that there was a petition to actually have it to keep it going. And there was a 4-month hiatus from episode 20 before the other 16 episodes were broadcast. So, is season 1 fantastic season? Are there better seasons later on? Do you think that they're all consistent in regards to their quality?
Well, I would say season 1, 2, 3, and 5. They're mixed, to be honest. You've got your classics amongst them, that you can't, that you always remember. It's like the people, they always say, oh, it's this one, it's this one, it's this one. The only one season was season 4, the hour-long ones. They are more difficult to sit and watch through. There's too much padding. I find there was too much padding in season 4, whereas like season 4, I really can't think one off the top of my head that it's me the same as like in season 1. Time Enough at Last or The Lonely. That was two probably out of a fair few of season 1 that I like. For me, it hit the ground running. Like the pilot episode, absolutely love that one. Because I'm one of these people all through life. I'm a lone wolf, and I find it's easy to understand, not understand where the person's coming from, but I'd like to be in that situation that person is. I'd like to be the Robinson Crusoe. And there's a couple of stories like that. It's just as a child. I mean, really, it's more of me still being that particular child and watching it, and fantasizing about being in those particular times. There's some as I said, we're going to be discussing some of the stories, and absolutely brilliant. Yeah, season 1 for me definitely hit the ground running. I wouldn't say there's any clunkers, but there's definitely some good ones. Some classics. I would say classics in there, and some very good ones, and some average but still very much washable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. I mean, I think we can get to read out some of the comments now. There aren't too many at the moment. There's actually quite a few people watching. So I do apologize about the beginning because I had to sort of like get rid of a person out of the room, I don't mind shaming them, Mr. Table and Chairs. I mean, stupid comment. So we had Colin Todd right actually before the start of the program. I think that comment was left sort of like about an hour before. He just said he's just started watching season 4 and he loves the show. Steve's is the first comment where it says buy a better watch. which I had to sort of like put, sorry Steve, my mum was not very well, because I was trying to do several sort of like things all at the same time. So he did turn around and say, sorry to hear that, note, my mum is well. So don't worry about all of that. Ian Hill then turned around and said, I'll just put that, I hope you are both okay and have a great stream. Steve then says, poor Denny looks like he's freezing to death. Put 50 pence in the meter and turn the fire on.
I'll be honest with you, Steve. I always have a scarf on. This time of year, I've always got one. It's just my little what's the name?
Yeah. I got LFC say hi, Dale. Sending my best wishes and hope your mum gets better soon. Yeah, it's just one of those things where she was cold. She said she was freezing, shivering a little bit. I then had to rush around getting a hot water bottle and all that sort of stuff, and that's and life takes you a little bit away from things. So apologies for that. And then of course that slowed me down talking about Denny before we started, just to say how we were going to start. And that then takes it even later, you see. So it's just that sort of thing. NFC then said, just thought I'd pop in for a few minutes before the football starts. By the time you read this, it will be kickoff. I take it that's a Liverpool game. Good luck to you, LFC. I hope that works out well. This is infinitely better than the football, Steve says. Ox says, in the 70s, I used to watch the radio in black and white. Yeah. I have to turn around and say I probably did exactly the same because we couldn't afford colour. There you are. So LFC then said, very true, Steve. I'm too loyal. That's the problem. Steve then laughs. We'll watch the rest of this tomorrow. Take care. Not a problem, LFC. You have a good one. Hope it works out well. Bye, LFC. And then Oxa said, always remember an episode where the people got stuck in the walls of a house. Don't know what season that was from. Don't think it was in season 1. I don't remember that. But we might as well. I think what's going to happen is that I was talking to Denny about this, is that there are lots and lots of, I mean, Twilight Zone is one of the most successful TV shows and is one that's embraced by the American audience, most definitely. They have marathons over there. I think they have a special Christmas broadcast in the month of December. I think it might also be due to the fact that Rod Serling was born Christmas Day. It has something. It might have something to do with that. But you know, it's such a great show that there are lots of sort of like websites that give out episode guides, synopses. There's discussions about what they talk about. It's even talked about in colleges in how to write scripts and all sorts of stuff. It's one of those types of shows that why then we're talking about it and adding to that. Who knows? It's just that's what me and Denny wanted to do. And as far as I'm concerned, that's good enough for me. If my friend wants to talk about the Twilight Zone, I know enough about it. That's it. We're instantly going to start talking about the Twilight Zone. But a lot of people, because there's so many episodes, probably don't remember just by the name of the title. Are going to remember many memories about it. That's what I'm trying to get at. So I said to Denny, I think the best way to deal with this is to read out the synopsis of it. Probably read out Rod Serling's sort of like narration at the beginning, because he narrated most of the episodes, although not all of them. He did the narration at the beginning, starting the episode, and he also did the narration at the end to end it all. So I thought it might be best to just read out the first paragraph of what it's all about. So the first episode then is, where is everybody? So, which is episode 1 of 36 episodes. Now, that was the other thing that frightened me. I turned around and said, how many seasons these days have episodes where there's 36 episodes? Bloody hell. Frasier on Paramount Plus at the moment has got 8 episodes. When you look at Doctor Who, it's got 10 episodes. Even in its heyday, I don't know whether it had 36 stories. It probably had more episodes, actually, thinking about it, because episodes were in 4 parts.
The very early days, yeah, there was quite a few in the very early days, wasn't there?
So it's amazing how we don't have programs now that start off and then go all the way through to the summer anymore. It'll be lucky if you started it off just before Christmas, that it wouldn't finish at Christmas. So we're gonna start off with, and we'll do these in a sort of order. Where is Everybody is well known to be the very first episode. And the opening narration from Rod Serling is, the place is here, the time is now, and the journey into the shadows that we're about to watch could be our journey. And it talks about it in the summary. It says, a man finds himself alone walking towards a diner. Inside, he finds a jukebox playing loudly and coffee hot on the stove. He hollers to the people in the kitchen, asking if they realize how loud it is, but he receives no response. He turns the music down and attempts to ask the cooks about the town up the road, but no one answers him. He inquires for some breakfast, but no chef or waitress is to be found. He hops over the bar and shouts out the back door, and no one can be found. He discovers breakfast food on the stove in the kitchen and a broken clock on the floor. As he helps himself to a cup of coffee, he shouts, hoping to get someone's attention. Finding no one, he leaves. He is not able to remember who he is or how he got there. That's basically the beginning of the episode. And basically the last paragraph says, and his name is Ferris, by the way, as Ferris is carried out of the hangar on a stretcher, he asks the doctor what went wrong. The doctor tells him that they are able to fix any problem, but the need for companionship. Ferris sees the moon above him and says wistfully, hey, don't go away up there. Next time it won't be a dream or a nightmare. Next time it'll be for real. So don't go away. We'll be there in a while. That's because the paragraph before explains that the reason that the whole episode has basically been an hallucination. He's been in a room for 400 odd days. And it was to find out whether we could go into space and combat loneliness. So the closing narration says, up there in the vastness of space, in the void that is sky, up there in an enemy is an enemy known as isolation. It sits there in the stars, waiting with the patience of eons, forever waiting in the Twilight Zone. So basically the theme is about isolation. So what's your thoughts on this particular episode? Do you think it was a good opening episode?
Yeah, absolutely fantastic opening episode. It was one of them. Again, it more or less, this particular opening episode more or less told me that the stories were not what not what you would expect. Basically, anybody watching that story from the start up till about 3/4 of that story, I would say, oh, he's dreaming, and he's going to wake up, like the Bobby Ewing thing. But it for me, why I think I just said to you before we went live, all through life I've been a lone wolf. I like time by myself. I like to be isolated. That's why, well, sadly, I gave my holiday home up yesterday. We finished with it, and that was the place I used to go to keep away. That's how I used to relate to this, and I loved anything like that, like the end of the world type stuff. But this one, I just found it fascinating, and he went from one place to another, even to the point where he was talking to the mannequins, thinking that was real people, to the point where he was starting to lose his mind. What's happening, what's going on, until the final point where Obviously, it's an experiment, as you say, for outer space. But the story is about loneliness. Even myself, who likes, to be on my own, it's one of them points where if you were shipwrecked like Robinson Crusoe, there's always something inside you that wants companionship, regardless, of the situation. So, could one person be sent up in space on their own and survive? I think the what's the name of the story is now that couldn't. Everybody needs companionship, regardless of how you live your life. Basically, that's the way I.
Yeah, that's a good summing up. From my point of view, I lived for 7 years up in Manchester and felt isolated. Apart from going to work and the fact that I talked to people that had problems with their computer, I had little to no talking with anybody, and I had that for 7 years. So I'm well aware of loneliness, but not so much isolation. I'm with you. I don't think we will ever combat isolation. We will always need companionship, no matter how much someone turns around and says, "Hey, I quite like my own company, and I'm quite happy for that." I don't think anybody can go days, weeks, months, and then years into not having anybody. It would drive them mental. And that's why I can understand a little bit about NASA and trying to get people into space and traveling long distances and what we're going to do about that. And that they'll and I think they've actually stated there'll never be a solo mission ever. It's just not going to happen. And I think that this one's ahead of its time a little bit. I don't know whether it comes from a deep feeling from Rod Serling in the fact that a lot of what he wrote is about personal experience. They say that a lot of his stories are about home because he missed home. They'd say a lot of his stories are about war because he was in the war. All of that sort of stuff. The very first episode talking about isolation and loneliness, I don't think he was a lonely person. But he obviously might have felt isolated and lonely in the war, might have been left by his troop or etc. on long days, on his tour of duty. Who knows? But it's a very prominent story. And
say ironically as well, we've got another story within year one, season one, which is which more or less is on the same theme, which we'll come to.
Yeah. I know the one that you're talking about. That's a little bit of a different take in regards to prison.
Yeah.
So I mean, but just to let everybody know, I did look on a fan site and they did give a public scoring system for the episodes. Where is everybody from the public got an 8? Now, I don't agree with all of the scores. I think the scores were way too high. I think it's a fan-based thing, and basically they haven't done enough because there are only 5 scores below 7. And if you look at 159 episodes, I think you'll find that you wouldn't score Where Is Everybody as high as 8. I think it's a solid 7. I think there are a lot better stories. There are a lot worse stories. I think it's a bang of a good start for the show. That's what I will say.
Yeah,
I am gonna cut to comments and then go to the next episode. So that's how we'll deal with this, because I don't want anybody to have to wait hours for us to talk about things. So Ox says, I think I first saw them properly when they reran them on Channel 4 in the 80s. Can never remember the names of the episodes though. I'm not quite sure. I didn't know Channel 4 showed them in the 80s. 80s was a very new channel for Channel 4. It only just started broadcasting then. I think BBC 2 showed them in the 80s, late. I think it was an ITV production up until the point the BBC bought it, because it was bought by ITV for the 60s. And I'm not quite sure, therefore, where it was duplicated and re-shown until we get to the point where they repeated the whole run, and BBC Two did do a whole run. They did all 150 something on BBC Two at 6 o'clock. In that famous slot where they've done Captain Scarlet and all the other stuff. So I'm not sure Channel 4 ever showed it. Do you know if Channel 4 ever showed it?
Channel 4, was they more showing the Irwin Allen stuff? Sunday dinner time?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's what I remember. Channel 4 did run Lost in Space, Voice to the Bottom of the Sea, Land of the Giants, and the Time Tunnel.
That's what I thought. That's where I'm saying I don't believe them showing black and white Twilight Zone episodes at 6 o'clock on any, and also was, I think it was like 1983 or 4 that Channel 4 started. So that's in the first 6 years that they would have been showing repeats of something. Where, if I remember rightly, Channel 4 wanted to be known as the different broadcasting arm, where they are totally different to the others. They wanted to distance themselves from ITV, BBC. Yeah. That's why they put the red triangle and all of this sort of stuff, and showing horror films when you couldn't show those horror films on any other channel. They wanted to basically be radicalized. So showing a repeat of the Twilight Zone doesn't sound right to me in the 80s, but you might be, Ox, you're probably right. I'm just letting you know, I couldn't even find this information out about UK. The AI, by the way, on Google just said the Twilight Zone was shown in other countries after the American debut. Oh, thanks very much. I didn't think it'd be before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was
I don't think it was even shown on the UK Sci-Fi channel, and they bought a lot of programming from the early days. It
definitely was shown on Sci-Fi.
On the UK Sci-Fi.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I remember Night Gallery, but I don't remember the early Twilight Zones on it.
Yeah, they showed it a long time, along with the $6 Million Man and a load of other stuff.
Oh,
the Hulk episodes. So I had it when it was part of B Sky, when it was B Sky B.
Oh yeah.
Monkey and the Squarial.
Yeah.
So when they merged, I think it was is that British Satellite Broadcasting is what it was called before Sky bought it. They had their own MTV channel called, based on the Powerhouse. It was called. It was based on the fact that that's where they were broadcasting from.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So they also had their own version of a sci-fi channel and their own version of the Sky One and all of that sort of stuff. So anyway, I'm diversifying a little bit here. That would have been the 90s anyway, which is much later than what Ox was saying. So we've got Paul Patrick, and he says, what are your favorite episodes from season 1? Any episodes you significantly recommend? The entire 60s series is on Paramount Plus USA at the moment. Yeah, and we can get it on Prime for Amazon at the moment, but you have to buy them. It's on a number of things, but I'm just going to let you know that we're talking about season 1 at the moment. So I'm going to let you know what my favorite season 1 episode is, and it's going to come as no big surprise. And that is Time Enough at Last, which I think is a lot of people's favorite episode. If you want to know a close second, it would be, and believe it or not, this is going to come a surprise, I think, anyway. That one of the other close episodes that I really, really like in this season is People Are Alike All Over. I always thought that story was brilliant. Most of the fandom that I got these figures from gave that a 4 out of 10. And they said it's a dumb story and the ending is predictable. And my answer to that is every story can be predictable if you guess it right. And dumb stories can be great if they're told well. I mean, when I was a kid and I was at school and they read out stories of Snow White and all of this sort of stuff, I could have easily turned around and went, Prince Charming is kissing Snow White. Yeah, that's horrible. Who can think of anything more disgusting than that? You see where I'm coming from? You can. It's a story told for years and years and for eons, and you could always turn around and say it's a shit story, but to a kid, it's not. And the Twilight Zone, I think, is also aimed at people that are not just adults. It's aimed at teenagers. It's aimed at maybe people close to being teenage age. And so that story is a great story as far as I'm concerned. That is perfectly acceptable to this season. I think possibly it is a weak story, and therefore, when you consider there's 156 episodes, to go through, it's lower down. But 4, now I'm sorry, even I would argue the fact it's
just to pick
more
on you,
deserving of a 4.
Pick up on your point though, you say about it resonates with children. I mean, I always say, and I class myself as this, part of me has never grown up.
Yeah.
It's like the Peter Pan thing. People are, like myself, it just carries with you through all your life. The inner child of you. I believe once you fully grow up, once the inner child leaves you, that's your life done for me. You can't take these things in, you can't take these wonderful stories in if that part of that child isn't with you. That's as far as I'm concerned, anyway. But season 1 episode, time enough at last. But there are others in the first season. Like I got a top tier, middle, and there's a good group. Now top tier, I would say that Where Is Everybody was in the middle for me on that one, which is very good.
Yeah.
Time enough at last.
They gave it a high 8.
Third
I
from
gave
the
it a
sun,
7.
2 top tier ones.
Yeah, so they gave it an 8.
7 for the pilot, yeah, because.
I mean, I haven't.
But it was a good twist at the end. As I said, it was normally.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's all right. It's just we were started to speak over each other. That was all a little bit there. Oh. So I just wanted to make sure that you could hear me okay. Yeah, I mean, I haven't done anything where I've put, these are in the middle ground, these are in the high ground. I'm just basically going to say what I thought was a number that I thought was more accurate. Definitely, I thought that Where Is Everybody is a good one, but not the best. Nowhere near the best. So Paul wanted to know what my favorite episode was of season 1. What's yours?
If I have to pick one, it would be Third from the Sun. And
Third from the Sun.
Yeah, Third from the Sun, but obviously we're going to come to that and I'll tell you the reasons why.
Okie dokie. So I hope that's okay for you, Paul. So we're going to move on now, and we're going to move to now called One for the Angels. So as I said before, I'll just read out what the actual synopsis of the story is. This one's about Lou Bookman. He's an unremarkable 60-ish salesman who works the city streets. Life passes without incident until one July afternoon when Mr. Death informs him that he is to die at midnight. Faced with the problem of finding a replacement for his elusive subject, Death arranges for little Maggie, a neighborhood child, to die in a traffic accident. Bookman, now determined to save the girl, has no choice but to confront Mr. Death and deliver the toughest sales pitch of his career. So the opening narration is street scene, summer, the present. Man on a sidewalk named Lou Bookman, age 60-ish, occupation pitchman. Lou Bookman, a fixture of the summer, a rather minor component to a hot July. A nondescript, commonplace little man whose life is a treadmill built out of sidewalks. In just a moment, Lou Bookman will have to concern himself with survival, because as of 3 o'clock this hot July afternoon, he'll be stalked by Mr. Death. So basically, I think you can understand here. It's called One for the Angels because he's a salesman and he's got to pitch the perfect salesman to the angels to beg for his life. Just trying to find it. The closing narration. So it says, sorry. So this is what happens. It says, in making this marvelous pitch, one so compelling that even Death himself was moved, a pitch for the angels, Bookman has willingly sacrificed his own life to save that of his friend, thus fulfilling his original agreement before leaving with Death. Bookman packs up his suitcase on legs containing his wares, hopefully remarking, you never know who might need something up there, he repeats with a note of uncertainty. Up there, Mr. Death smiles. Up there, Mr. Bookman, you made it. So the closing narration says, Lewis J. Bookman, age 60-ish, occupation pitchman, formerly a fixture of the summer, formerly a rather minor component to a hot July, but throughout his life a man beloved by the children, and therefore a most important man. Couldn't happen, you say? Probably not in most places, but it did happen in the Twilight Zone. So this episode deals heavily with the theme of death and its inevitability. That's what basically this one is about. I quite like this story, but I've seen stories of this before. Cheating death. I probably haven't seen it from a point of view of a salesman pitching to heaven. Please let me live. But I think it's quite prominent and quite poignant, should I say, that Serling brings a child element into it. I don't know quite whether that was on purpose or not, but there is a heavy child element in a number of the stories, especially when there's hallucinations or thinking back to their youth or trying to recapture youth. That's another thing that Serling does an awful lot of. This one from fandom got a 10 out of 10. I think that's too high from my point of view. It's definitely a solid 8. But I'm going to let you talk for this, Denny, while I just speak to my mother for a moment.
Yeah, for me, I would say this is a solid 7, another 7 for me. Basically, he tries to keep putting death off, saying he can't go now, whatever. But basically, what he done, his consequences had the actions of this little girl's life being took. Realising what had happened, obviously he then does the one last final sales pitch to Death, and he got it. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Del, it was past 12 o'clock. If he got past 12 o'clock, then basically he took Mr. Bookman instead. Was that?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't read out the whole synopsis. I just basically read out the beginning, and so what the story was about in the end to bookmark the narration. But
so as I said, basically, like his consequences, he caused the child to die. And basically, it shows the person that Mr. Bookman was, a wonderful man who knows he was saving the girl that he'd lose his own life. But, I'm trying to find the words really for this. He realised the mistake probably he made, basically, at the end of the day. And basically selfless, he didn't want to he didn't want to see the child lose a life for something that he'd done, basically, just the morals of the man, shall I say. It was the morals of the man, and it was a nice story, but not the twist that would set it apart from one of the top tier episodes, but a very good episode that I'll give it a solid 7 again on that one.
Yeah, I think because the other episode for me had a science fiction type element to it that I gave this a 7 myself. Any story that's a little bit grounded, that I haven't seen before, probably would get higher. This one is definitely it's got an endearing point to it, I think. You know, it's one of those ones. It's one of those ones where I don't know whether this was intentional as well, but he's a salesman and he's in his 60s. Now, it wasn't a salesman in his 30s. It wasn't a salesman in his 40s. It wasn't a salesman in his 50s. It was definitely his 60s. And I don't know whether it's, did the guy think to himself, I still want to live, but basically I'm more, I definitely have a stronger bond that I don't want the child to die. I don't know.
Well,
Maybe you'd have felt less if you'd have been in your 30s, your 40s, and your 50s. I don't know.
But he loved the children, didn't he? Yeah.
Well, yeah, there is the love of the children, but think about this. He's a salesman. He cons people. He basically sells stuff that's probably knockoff. From that point of view, he's going to do the sales pitch that will basically keep his life. He's trying to scam heaven.
Death, yeah.
Right? So if you're trying to scam heaven, you could also turn around and say he probably doesn't care about the children. It's mentioned at the beginning that he does. You know, you can see that there's a caring nature about him. But I was thinking to myself, would that story have stuck if it had been 50, if it had been 40, if it had been 30? I wonder if 60 was something that is consciously mentioned.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's just one for people to dwell over. There's no point dwelling over it for now, but it was just one that I go, yeah, as you get older, I should think that it's more prominent that you're going to sell it. You're going to save the girl.
I mean, really, if you look at it, you know, but that take him in his 60s, was that a precedent at the time where life expectancy for a man was around about 60, 65 in that particular era?
Yeah. So he wanted to live, wasn't ready to die. But he also sacrificed himself basically
for the child.
And that's where I'm going. It's a nice little story, really, but I don't. And I think the story works because he's old.
Yeah,
that's how I looked at it. That's how it came across to me. And then I thought to myself, it wouldn't work if he was 50 or 40 or 30. It wouldn't have become. It wouldn't have made as much sense. So there's no more comments on that one. So that so basically, hopefully, people are still sort of like there. So we'll move on to the next one. That was one for the angels. The next one I've got is Mr. Denton on Doomsday. So yes, I remember this one. So this is the synopsis for it. Town drunk Al Denton, once a feared gunslinger, but now an object of pity and scorn, is forced to draw against a sadistic bully. A glance from the mysterious paddler, Mr. Fate, allows Denton to get off two miraculous shots, saving his life. Now a town hero, Denton regains his self-respect and swears off liquor, but soon the routine that drove him off the bottle in the first place begins again. Denton is challenged to a shootout by a young hotshot practicing. Denton finds his ability with a gun is long gone. In desperation, he turns to fate for more magic. What fate provides might just save Denton from a bullet, or it might do much, much more. So that's the premise of the episode. The opening narration is equally as long, by the way. I'm trying to get this short as possible. It's got portrait of a town drunk named Al Denton. This is a man who's begun his dying early, a long organizing route through a maze of bottles. Al Denton, who would probably give an arm or a leg or a part of his soul to have another chance, to be able to rise up and shake the dirt from his body and the bad dreams that infest his consciousness. In the parlance of the times, this is a peddler, a rather forceful-looking little man in a black frock coat. A gun appears beside Denton, and this is the third principal character of our story. Its function, perhaps to give Mr. Al Denton a second chance. So, I mean, pretty sure that you can tell here that Rod Serling has basically said this is about second chances. The closing narration says, the end says, Denton tells his young opponent that they have both been blessed because they will never again be able to fire a gun in anger. Henry J. Fate tips his hat to Denton, and rides quietly out of town. Just as fate has helped one man out of a pit, he had simultaneously prevented another from falling into one. And the closing narration is Mr. Henry Fate, dealer in utensils and pots and pans, liniments and potions. A fanciful little man in a black frock coat who can help a man climbing out of a pit of another man and falling into another one. Because you see, fate can work that way in the Twilight Zone. So yeah, this is one where there was a gunfight at the end. Both of them stalemated basically at the end.
Yeah.
And therefore, Mr. Fate, who is this seller of ointments and so forth, has basically done his job and saved both of them, which was the end result for this. I think, from my personal point of view, the fans gave this one an 8. I'd give it another 7. I like westerns, don't get me wrong. I like the idea that this is a drunk who's basically at the end of his tether, given a second chance. And the stalemate at the end basically means that they both go on with their lives and they both have a second chance, while Fate, who's designated as a character in this, rides off knowing that his job is done. I think that's quite a nice little story.
But this one, it stars a very, very young Martin Landau. This one does. The chap who was bullying him. Now, for me, I'll give this one a 6. A good story again. But the question was left untold for me. It was left untold. Was it still got the skills, or was it just complete coincidence that they both shot each other's hands so they couldn't, fire up on anybody again? Or was this, peddler, was he just conning them? You never did really know, or whether it was a magic liniment.
Yeah. There is a bit at the end that Rod Serling says where he says, with a knowing smile and a glint, rides off knowing that his job is done, which seems to indicate to me that he wasn't conning anybody. He just basically got the job done, and they both have a second chance, which means he sold them both the same thing, and they both came away with exactly what they wanted, a second chance, which is a great way of looking at it. But obviously the theme on this one is fate and redemption. For me, it does come across with that, but I don't think it's a very strong story to talk about fate and redemption. There's stronger stories about fate. There's stronger stories about redemption. It's just those are two aspects that are high in westerns, I tend to find, which is why I thought it was quite good, and why I've probably given it a higher score than you of 7 over your 6, because I think it's a perfect setting. The setting of a western for fate and redemption themes is quite high. That's that,
It's I mean, do you remember the song that Martin Landau got him to sing so he could have another drink in it?
I can't remember that.
Was it something along the lines of "I am so dry"? I am so dry.
Yeah.
That's just from my mind. It's just what I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, as I said, it was a solid 6. It's not a poor episode by any stretch of the imagination. But as you say, keep it realistic for some of the real bangers that come later. That was it was a good episode that I enjoyed, but it wasn't one I remember it more for Martin Landau, to be honest, than anything else. But I take your point on board, fight and redemption. Yeah. But
I'll tell you one thing though. There's a trope that is starting to appear in the stories. I don't know if you've noticed it, but this was the 3rd story, and twice now we've had a person pop up that is a character that is a character, but is basically an unearthly character. So we've got fate and we've had death. Both turn up as characters peddling their wares. And I think that's something that happens an awful lot in the Twilight Zone.
I don't know. I just wish that it probably is somebody took better than me, really, on that point. As I said, I always wondered whether it was that shot at each other and it was just coincidence, or he sold them the potions and it actually happened the way it happened. But I suppose you can make your own mind up about that, can't you? Really, I suppose.
Yeah. So I'm going to read out a few comments now, just before we go any further. So Steve says, "Sorry guys, I didn't watch this much and remembered so few episodes, so I can't contribute much, but I'm enjoying this." So that's really nice. No, it doesn't really matter. Like I say, it's good for people that do recognize these ones. They'll have a different probably opinion to us or what. So that's great. Ross says, "Hi, Del and Denny." Maymeister's in. Hello, Maymeister. He says, "Evening, chaps. Loved me a bit of the original Twilight Zone. Rod Serling was just about I think that's coolest guy out there."
Yeah.
I'd agree with that. Rod Serling, as you know, is my hero, Al, and Denny has basically said pretty much similar sort of thing. Probably, I mean, I've said hero, you've said just great author. I think is he a hero of yours or what? Didn't quite get
absolutely. That. Yeah, he's an absolute genius. He's probably one of the strongest writers out there. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, definitely died too early, that's for sure. But then again, was it lung cancer?
Yeah, he was constantly.
It's not sort of like that. It wasn't gonna happen. He smoked. He smoked on TV through his narration. He smoked all his life.
But it was the thing at the time, now wasn't it, Del? To be honest, they've always got to have a cigarette. It was like the film thing,
Oh yeah. I mean, he was in the army as well. I'm pretty sure that he'd have been smoking all the way through there. And I tell you what, I wouldn't take a packet of fags off of somebody that's in the trenches with bloody bullets flying over the top of your heads. I'll tell you what, I'd give him 60 packs. And there you are, and have the lot in one night. And Ross is saying, watching the Rangers game and listening to the stream. No, that's perfectly fine. I'm hoping that this is probably quite a good format. It is slowing us all down, but then again, nobody said that we'll get to the end of season 1 by the end of this. We might put it into 2 parts.
Yeah, that'd probably be a good idea.
Or whatever. I think it's the best way to do it, because if I read out what the next title is, nobody's going to remember what the hell we're talking about. So I find it the best way to read out the synopsis of the story and then read out what Rod Serling said about it at the beginning of the episode and what happened at the end, because I think he's got a way of words. I wish I could actually read it in his style of Rod Serling, but I can't.
It reminds me of he reminds me of so much with his wording of one of our comedians, the late past Les Dawson. He had a good turn of words as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So the next episode is the 16mm shrine. Yeah. So this one, the synopsis reads on the wiki: Barbara Jean Trenton is an actress past her prime, a once brilliant star who sequesters herself in a private screening room where she can relive the flickering moments of a fleeting fame played out on the silver screen. Watching her old film drives her deeper into another world, a world beyond space and time, one step away from the Twilight Zone. So that's the synopsis of the story. The opening narration reads: picture of a woman looking at a picture. Movie great of another time, once brilliant star in a firmament no longer a part of the sky, eclipsed by the movement of earth and time. Barbara Jean Trenton, whose world is a projection room, whose dreams are made out of celluloid. Barbara Jean Trenton struck down by a hit and run years and lying on the unhappy pavement, trying desperately to get the license number of fleeting fame. So actually, it's quite an easy story to note. The closing, in fact, the episode summary is actually only about 8 lines. What's basically happening here is that she's a past woman looking at her past on celluloid. That's basically all you sort of need to know. It reads like this: aging film star Barbara Jean Trenton secludes herself in her private screening room where she reminisces about her past by watching her old films. In an attempt to bring her out into the real world, her agent, Danny Weiss, arranges a part for her in a new movie and brings in a former leading man. now also older, many years retired from acting and managing a chain of grocery stores, to visit her. This horrifies Barbara Jean and only drives her further into seclusion. Then one day, Barbara Jean's maid finds the screening room empty and is horrified by what she sees on the screen. Danny comes over and sees on the screen the living room of the house filled with movie stars and Barbara Jean as they appeared in the old films. She throws her scarf towards the camera and departs just before the film ends in the living room. Danny finds Barbara Jean's scarf. Closing narration is to the wishes that come true, to the strange mystic strength of the human animal who can take a wishful dream and give it a dimension of its own. To Barbara Jean Trenton, movie queen of another era, who has changed the blank tomb of an empty projection screen into a private world. It can happen in the Twilight Zone. So, yeah, this one's a mystical one, really, isn't it? Where she's so far gone that she's walked into the screen itself, and she's now in her element with all of her past stars, and she looks exactly as she did when she was on the celluloid itself. It's this is a theme about age, isn't it? That's basically what it is.
And it's basically it's as everybody gets older, they don't feel as worthy, or that they're not looked at in the same way. It's the continuing story, isn't it? But for me, this one was actually one of the lesser known stories. I knew what was going to happen at the end. This is the one I worked out of quite a lot of them. This is the one I worked out. I knew she was going to be in the film. And just to tie into today, it sort of reminds me so much of Somewhere in Time, the film. This particular episode, where it thinks back to where the time she was before. But yeah, she had. Would you say she had a bit of an ego about her, that she?
Oh yeah,
she.
But I
think
anybody that's a leading woman, as she portrayed herself, is obviously going to be. This is a time where I captivated an audience. I was the thing. So obviously that's an ego, isn't it? That's something where you're going to go, I've lost all that. As age has come along, I've become less relevant.
Yeah.
And that's what age is. That's why it's a story about age. And from my point of view, from my point of view, I'd seen this episode before I'd seen Somewhere in Time.
Yes, yeah.
Somewhere in Time was something that, I probably would have seen it within a year of the episode, but I'm pretty sure I saw the Twilight Zone before I saw Somewhere in Time. Somewhere in Time, as you know, is one of my favorite films.
Yeah.
So this one is going to be a sort of like a favorite episode of mine, because it obviously tells the same sort of story and it comes off with the same sort of ending. It's very weird how she throws the scarf at the camera, but then the scarf is then found on the floor in the room where the film is being projected. That to me sort of like is Last Action Hero, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, what another thing that that I tie in as well, because she in her room she was just having all of her films on, and it was very similar to what I don't know whether you ever knew this about Michael Jackson. He always used to have all the films from the 80s in this one room, constantly playing all the while. Like
I knew that he was big on that sort of thing, but I didn't know they were in the same room. No.
Yeah, that was basically, he wanted to surround himself still in the 80s. It's more or less the same thing, isn't it? I suppose it's the what's name, like people like myself. I don't like change. I don't like change, and things change. And it's one of them things she couldn't come to accept it, could she? She couldn't come to accept it. So,
somebody that doesn't want to accept she's getting older, and therefore that she should just live life and be happy for what she's got and what she had. Yeah. This is a person that didn't want to let go. So,
but for me, this is, for me, this is, again, I'm not saying it's a bad episode by any chance, but if I'm marking all the others, this one is a 5 for me, because I worked out the ending on this one. But it's a solid.
So I mean, like I say, we'll come across people are alike all over, but they gave it a similar low score because they knew the ending and said it was a dumb story.
No, it's not. Well,
I don't really look at things like that. By the way, the public gave this 9.
No.
Now, from my point of view, because it's talking about film and because it's about age and not wanting to give up age and want to become still relevant, it's an 8 for me. It really is quite a strong story. It depends on how you look at it. Some people, like I say, if they've guessed it, will mark it lower. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. It all depends on how you're marking these things up. For me, a tale that's told well is a tale told well. Doesn't matter whether I've guessed it or not. There's going to be people that would guess it and then got it right and then pat themselves on the back going, I knew it all along. Nah. If you're watching something for the first time and you get 10 minutes in and you've got a hunch, and then at the end you got it, you're always going to probably turn around and go, yeah, I knew it all along. I think that happens just in your head. It's just a natural thing that goes through. My point of view on it is it's the journey that you're going on, and I thought the journey that was being told was a good one, and one that I thought was well told. So I marked it a little bit higher than you, but that's not saying anything really.
Out of interest, you know, the actual hallway where they come through the front door, the staircase and all that.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know whether was that from Dark Shadows. The set of
it looked like it. Dark Shadows. You walked through the door, if I remember rightly, and straight forward is the drawing room.
Yeah.
To the right is the staircase that took you upstairs.
Yeah. They look very much like
in this one. I think it was the hallway, and you went straight forward, and it was the same thing. But it almost seemed like it was a bit further away. But it could well have been.
Yeah.
Was Dark Shadows a CBS show?
Oh God, no! I just think it was just public broadcasting, wasn't it? It was that very.
So I doubt it then.
Very low budget.
This was a CBS show where they spent 650,000 per episode on something.
But I mean, somebody correct me if I'm wrong because I ain't 100%, but I thought it was PBS because it was very.
Yeah, I think it was PBS.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. Like I said, I just can't tell. I wouldn't know without really looking. I've watched, like I said, I think I've accurately told you there what the actual hallway was of Dark Shadows. So you know I've seen it.
Yeah.
It's just like I think it's just because of its wooden paneling and all that sort of stuff that makes you think, yeah, it's the same set, you know. But I wouldn't know. I really wouldn't know. We're going to talk now about walking, because there's no extra comments here. We're going to talk about walking distance. This is another well-known one. This is the synopsis. Advertising executive Martin Sloan, age 36, is exhausted by the hectic pace of life in New York City. One day, while in an especially disgruntled mood, Martin goes for a drive in the country and winds up not far from his old hometown. He stops, leaving his car at a gas station, and sets off on foot to the town. Mysteriously, he arrives to find things exactly as they were when he was a child. Then reality sets in. His short walk has taken him a long way, much further than he thought, all the way to the Twilight Zone. If you haven't guessed it already, this is a time traveling story where he's going to meet himself. He actually meets his dad, and his dad returns a wallet to him. I remember this quite distinctly, and it says, "I've learned an awful lot about you, Mr. Sloan. I've looked at your cards, your driving license, etc., etc." And he's realized that that he was talking to his son, and his son at the age of 36. He scares himself basically in the story, doesn't he? And the lad gets a damaged foot or something, if I remember rightly. His foot gets damaged, but he isn't going to walk with a limp or anything for the rest of his life or anything. But he realizes that the journey that he's got to get home is a journey through time rather than through distance.
Yeah.
And that's how this is. So the opening narration is Martin Sloan, age 36, occupation vice president, ad agency, in charge of media. This is not just a Sunday drive for Martin Sloan. He perhaps doesn't know it at the time, but it's an exodus. Somewhere up the road, he is looking for sanity, and somewhere up the road, he finds something else. The ending narration is a man can think of thoughts and walk a lot of pavements between afternoon and night. And to a man like Martin Sloan, till memory has suddenly become reality, a resolve can come just as clearly and inexorably as stars in the summer night. Martin Sloan is now back in time, and his resolve is to put it calm to the past. So yeah, it's a pretty good story, really. Walking Distance. What's your thoughts?
Not too many on this one. To be honest, I don't know with this one. I remember it. I remember it well, where he goes back to see himself. Does he connect with his father at the age of 36?
Yeah. He's sitting by the galloping horses, and he returns his wallet to him.
Yeah.
He returns his wallet to him as a 36-year-old man. And then right. The realization is I'm talking to my dad.
But did his dad know it was him? I can't remember this story.
Yeah, because he looked in the wallet and it says Martin Sloan, your driving license ends in 25 years from now. I've worked out who you are. You're my son. But you're my son at the age of 36, not the son that I've got in my bedroom. And then he has a talk with him and turns around to him and says, yeah, the person that belongs in this time is the person that is my son now. You don't belong in this time. You belong in your own time. That's where you ought to be heading back to now.
So basically, it was just a yearning to go back to his youth.
That's why it's a story about youth. It's a story about his dad actually reminds him and says, you're looking in the wrong places. You shouldn't have come back here. You should have just gone out of town, out of New York a little way, and you'd have found a similar little dusty town with a little fair and little parties going on with hay bales. You didn't have to travel all the way back to your home to find that. So it was all about capturing back your youth and going back to your home, because that's where you feel comfort would be, where you don't naturally have to do that.
So basically, your home is where your heart is, basically.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Walking Distance gets a 9 in fandom. I found this one to be a 6.
I'd agree with that one. Again, it was, well, as you can tell, I didn't quite remember that one fully. I can remember some of the scenes, but not one that I would say has really stuck with me. But there's one particular thing about that particular episode: featured music. One of your favourites?
I've just closed that down. I know that the theme is done by Bernard Herrmann, but it's probably Jerry Goldsmith.
No, Bernard Herrmann. Yeah, Bernard Herrmann.
Yeah, Bernard Herrmann did the theme, and he did a number of scores here. Season 1, Bernard Herrmann is quite prominent, actually. Believe it or not. So, anything else to add? Because my opinion of that one, I've given a score for it. It's a quaint little story. I have moved to Manchester and then moved back home. It doesn't go into the necessities of going home. It just talks about he wanted to drive home and actually travelled back in time.
Well,
that's the fantasy element of it.
I think that should tell you all, though it was one I struggled to remember, to be honest. I remember little tidbits of it, but a 6. I think 6 is fair for that one.
Yeah. So the next one's Escape Clause. By the way, every single story so far up till now has been written by Rod Serling. There has not been a change at all from this. So reading out this one then, it says 44-year-old Walter Bedecker is a hypochondriac per excellence. So when the devil, in the form of fat, jolly Mr. Cadwallader, I think I'm pronouncing these correct, appears and offers him immortality and indestructibility in exchange for his soul, Bedecker jumps at the chance. He insists on the escape clause, however. If at any time he tires of life, all he needs do is summon Cadwallader. Soon, Bedecker is delighted to find that nothing can harm him. Steaming radiators can't burn him, and throwing himself in front of speeding subway trains only rips his clothes. Insurance agents aren't lining up to paying him off handsomely for all his little accidents, and yet something is missing. Life lacks a certain zip. Bedecker has a nasty feeling Cadwallader has pulled a fast one, and in his quest for bigger and better thrills, Bedecker is setting himself up for a nasty shock, courtesy of the Twilight Zone. So that's the synopsis. Opening narration. You're about to meet a hypochondriac. Witness Mr. Walter Bedecker. I cannot pronounce these names. Bedecker. Bedecker. Age 44. Afraid of the following: death, disease, other people, germs, draft, and everything else. He has one interest in life, and that's Walter Bedecker. One preoccupation for life and well-being of Walter Bedecker. One abiding concern about society, that if Walter Bedecker should die, how will it survive without him? That's the synopsis. So in the episode's final scene, a dismayed Bedecker contemplates spending an infinite duration of time locked in a cage and how useless his immortality has become. On cue, the devil shows up and reminds the man of the escape clause, facing eternity in jail. Bedecker nods and suffers a fatal heart attack. So at the end of the day, there's the irony of you can wish for all these things, but basically in the end, you know, I'm going to win. And cue the devil and gives him a fatal heart attack, and that's the end of the story. Bit of a squib on this one. There's a saying, is the narration. By the way, the closing narration, there's a saying: every man is put on earth condemned to die. Time and method of execution unknown. Perhaps this is as it should be. Case in point, Walter Bedecker, lately deceased, a little man who, with such a yen to live, beaten by the devil, by his own boredom, by the scheme of things in the Twilight Zone. So obviously this is an escape clause. It's another story where death is portrayed by a character. Thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's a classic case of all that glitters isn't gold. This again, this reminds me of a film that me and you both like, the Ep6. Living forever. There's always a way life will trip you up. I think it's a way of telling you you've got one life, enjoy it to its full. Basically, enjoy it to its full. I don't think there's anything more you can add to it. Really, it's just having, you know, if somebody come to you, or you can live forever. You know, people want to live forever, you know, but at the end of the day, there's always consequences to anything, really. And living forever, no, I mean, one day this planet ain't going to be here, is it? So I wouldn't like fancy drifting round in space, keep suffocating every time we come round again. Wouldn't be the best of times, would it?
I did like the ideas that the man chose to scam things to get through life, basically. Going to insurance people. You know, he was putting on life insurance for himself and then basically claiming on that money. I thought that was quite good.
But I thought there was another element as well where he was constantly bored as well. There was nothing to attain. He was throwing himself.
That's the end, isn't it? He's basically bored.
Thrown in front of trains, trying to kill himself. He couldn't kill himself. And there was no thrills for him, was there? No thrills at all. So it's
so in Groundhog Day, where the ultimate boredom is the fact that he's living the day over and over again. Each day in this one is a different day. But he got bored because there was nothing thrilling. At the end of the day, you sometimes find that hard to understand, don't you? Because you could go through life going, wow, I can have any woman I want. I can go from woman to woman. I can do whatever I want. I know that there's going to be no repercussions. I'm going to pick up no disease, nothing from these people. I can just basically have what I want.
Well, I'll be honest. Be honest with you, I would like to see your Blu-ray collection after another 500 years. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, there is all of that. You know, like I said, I found it the actual scoring for this one, Escape Clause, is a 7. I thought it was a little bit better than that, but I gave it I gave it a 7 as well. But based on their scoring, 7 is the lowest score they've ever given, and I don't think it was the worst out of all the stories that I've read out so far. It's not the worst.
Yeah,
I found other stories weaker.
Yeah, 7 will differ me. 7 will differ.
Yeah. So we're agreeing on that one. So we move forward. Like I say, we've got to keep moving forward because we're at 9 o'clock and we're only how many have we done? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And only another 30 to go.
30 to go. So I don't care though. It doesn't matter if I split this into as many as I need. So the next one is the lonely. Common theme. It actually says it in the title what this one is. So this one's another for me, another great story. So this is the synopsis. For inmate James A. Corrie, solitary confinement means life on an asteroid 9 million miles from Earth. Corrie craves human contact so much so that he counts the minutes until a roving ship makes an annual drop-off of provisions. Corrie may well be the loneliest man in the universe, but all of that is about to change because the supply ship is on its way, this time carrying a special package for Corrie that will help him to forget his problems and present him with a whole new dilemma. So the opening narration: witness, if you will, a dungeon made out of mountains, salt flats, and sands that stretch to infinity. The dungeon has an inmate, James A. Corrie, and this is his residence: a metal shack, an old touring car that squats in the sun and goes nowhere. For there is nowhere to go. For the record, let it be known that James A. Corrie is a convicted criminal placed in solitary confinement. Confinement in this case stretches as far as the eye can see, because this particular dungeon is an asteroid 9 million miles from Earth. Now witness, if you will, a man's mind and body shriveling in the sun, a man dying of loneliness. So, I mean, actually, you can read the whole synopsis out, but I'll just try and read out the last couple of lines. Reluctantly, Alderney draws his gun and shoots Alicia full in the face, revealing the mass of smouldering wires and circuitry. He tells Corrie, all you're leaving behind is loneliness. Stunned, Corrie replies, I must remember that. I must remember to keep that in mind. Closing the narration: on a microscopic piece of sand that floats through space is a fragment of a man's life. Left to rust is the place he lived in and the machines he used. Without use, they will disintegrate from the wind and the sand and the years that act upon them. All of Mr. Corrie's machines, including the one made in his image, kept alive by love, but now obsolete in the Twilight Zone. Yeah, I didn't read that out quite to the end, but basically, if I remember rightly, he's given a pardon and he leaves the robot behind and he shoots the robot before he leaves because there's no point for that robot to come along with him. It's lived its purpose, basically.
That was the guard that shot the android, that wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it's basically a man who's lonely falls in love with an android, basically, and then loses love again and's lonely again.
Yeah,
very sad.
That's it. Now, this story in fandom got 10. It's not that good. I'd give it a solid 8. Might go up to a 9.
I would give it to
9 million miles is what the thing that I always got with this was, even when I was watching this, and maybe it's because it was later in life, I was going 9 million miles. Bloody hell. That ain't very far away.
Well,
You know what I mean?
Mars is 36, isn't it? Something like that.
Shouldn't you say something like 900,000 million miles away, and you might sort of like have something to actually say about it? But 9 million miles, if you went round the Earth, I think about 5 times, you'd probably cover about 9 million miles.
I must admit, it's one of those stories again that feeds more loneliness. I love to go like that and just be there.
Yeah,
and
it's
just
about. I mean, they're reading out something that's probably something like, it's you're about right, isn't it? It's before Mars, probably the asteroid belt he was talking about. I don't know, but then it wouldn't be very sunny on an asteroid belt.
No.
See what I mean? I was probably pulling this one apart a little bit, even then when I was watching it. You know what I mean?
With the story, though, for me, I would give it an 8 because I said he's lonely, then he falls in love with an android.
I think it's genius that it's called The Lonely.
Yeah,
and basically he's a convict, and we're putting our convicts in space. I think that was marvelous. I was going, can we do that all the time?
Well,
he does throw them up into space and say they are bugger off.
He would solve a few problems, wouldn't he?
You know, but that's the genius of the story. But then the letdown is,
but obviously
not really a letdown, but it's
he loses the android. He's lonely again. He's going to be lonely when he goes back to Earth. So, he might as well have stopped where he was.
Yeah, I mean, again, this one's got a famous actress, isn't it? Was it Jean Marsh? Is it?
Yes, Jane Marsh. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, Bernard Herrmann did the score. I'm just looking. So Rod Serling wrote it. Yeah, it's all the familiar sort of like stuff. It's a solid story. Don't get me wrong. It's just, for me, there are better. I bend towards the space ones. I give a higher score to the space ones.
Well, I think me and you both do because we like science fiction, really.
You know what I mean? So, so we move now to Time Enough at Last.
Yeah, good on this one.
Yeah, believe it or not, the public only gave this 9.
Wow.
See, where I thought that it's the 11. The amount of stuff that I've read about it. This was an instant 10. But anyway, if you don't know Time Enough at Last, I don't know where you've been with this one, but we'll read it out anyway. Henry Bemis, a bookish little man with thick horn-rimmed glasses, wants only one thing out of life: the time to read. Reading is his only passion in an otherwise mundane existence, and it's almost an impossibility due to his shrewish wife, who deems reading silly, a boss at the bank who's interested in efficiency, not education, and the unrelenting hands of the clock. Now all that is about to change, as he does every day. Bemis sneaks down to the vault to read during his lunch hour, but today, when he emerges from his private sanctuary, he will enter a new world, a world that might or might not fulfill his lifelong dream. Yeah, that's quite true. So this one's quite an easy one. Here's the narration. Witness Mr. Henry Bemis, a charter member in the fraternity of dreamers, a bookish little man whose passion is the printed page, but is conspired against by a bank president and a wife and a world full of tongue cluckers and the unrelenting hands of a clock. But in just a moment, Mr. Bemis will enter a world without bank presidents or wives or clocks or anything else. He'll have a world all to himself without anyone at all. So, yeah. We know what this is. Bemis decides to commit suicide, but the final moment, his eyes fall on the ruins of a library. For him, it is paradise. Gleefully, he piles all the books high, organizes his reading for years and years to come. But as he settles down to read the first book, his glasses slip off of his nose and smash, trapping him forever in a hopelessly blurred world. Henry despairs, remarking, That's not fair. That's not fair at all. There was time now. There was time. There was all the time I wanted. That's not fair. And bursts into tears, surrounded by the books he would never be able to read. The closing narration is the best laid plans of mice and men and Henry Bemis, the small man in the glasses who wanted nothing but time. Henry Bemis now just a part of a smashed landscape, just a piece of the rubble, just a fragment of what man has decided to himself, Mr. Henry Bemis in the Twilight Zone. So yeah, we all know this story quite well. There's a nuclear bomb that goes off. Everybody's dead but him, which is a bit hard to believe, but you know, he's the only one alive. That's what you're supposed to expect. He's ridiculed because he likes reading. All those people have gone away. He lines up all the books for himself to read. Unfortunately, he's got bad eyesight. His glasses fall on the floor, smash. There's no one to fix them. He's got no spares. That's the end of him. He's now just like the rocks on the floor, useless. He's going to now. He might as well commit suicide as far as anybody's concerned. That's the end of Mr. Bemis. To me, this is a classic 10. It's been spoofed, spooled, and everything else. Simpsons has done it. Futurama's done it. It's probably been in Family Guy. It's just about everywhere. It's quoted all the time. Reading up on this, apparently it's the 11th best story ever told in drama. We're not talking about the Twilight Zone. It's 11th of all dramas. I give it a 10. But then again, this one is one of those twists that, like Planet of the Apes, went, oh, wow. Talk about, I was so happy for him. I think what other people have done to lower the score to 9 is they said, were the people around him that bad? Did they deserve all to die?
Well, it wasn't really about that, was it?
And is Mr. Bemis a nice man? Because he didn't exactly like spend much time with people or want to even contemplate talking to them. He looked at them as what he put on there. It was as clock. What did he? It was that funny
Cluckers,
thing.
Cluckers.
Yeah, cluckers. So in other words, he didn't really like people at all. In fact, I don't know why. I don't know how he got married. If you look at it from the point of view of the person that's watching this, he's not a likable person.
No, because he didn't like people, but he took a job where he had to, customer service, be with people. You know, it's a bit of a paradox in itself, isn't it, this story, if you think about it.
So it does have its flaws. Because, like I say, a person like that probably wouldn't be in customer services.
Yeah, but it depends on how you look at things, isn't it? You know, I mean, my dad's friend, God rest his soul. I mean, he was, funny enough, he was exactly like Henry Bemis. He loved his books, and it's so strange. That's why, you know, sometimes your real life intertwines with stories like this. My dad's, he said he'd bring books, he'd bring a pile of books like this, and he'd be reading them while he was doing his work. Now, he worked in a foundry, so he had more chance, but he didn't have time for, he hated women, you know, and he hadn't got time for much, you know, anybody else. It was all about him and his hobbies and his book reading. So he sort of parallels that, you know.
Yeah. Like I said, it's just, is that person that you're talking about there, though, the norm, though? I mean, at the end of the day, we have to talk about this as being a story for the masses. Is this person a nice person or not? And I must admit, for years and years and years, I was rooting for Mr. Bemis. But actually, when I think about it, the reason I think of that is because I didn't like the wife. But that doesn't mean that the wife is just like the rest of the world.
Because it's probably fed up of him because he doesn't want to do anything in the house, does he? You know, he's constantly got his head in the books and is probably frustrated for the fact that he won't do anything else. That's what I'm reading into it. I mean, is it just the classic case of you can't have your cake and eat it? Is that how it comes
Yeah.
to in the end? You know.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. It's one of the classics of the first season. It's a 10 without a shadow of a doubt.
I think it's a 10. They gave it a 9. I'd go, nah, don't agree with that either. I was looking at all these scores going, nah, bollocks.
Yeah.
You know, to an awful lot of this. But this is what makes the Twilight Zone such an interesting thing to discuss, to be quite honest. It's like certain fans will see something in a story and others will pound it down to the ground.
But you're right. You're right. The ending, it's perfect in every single.
Oh,
You think, well, how's this going to end? He's got all the books to read now. He's piling up January, February to December. Then this is for next year, and you've got them all piled up, and all of a sudden his glasses fall off, and you go, "Oh my God, no! Oh, the poor man!" Like, you know.
The other thing that's in this particular story is it's about nuclear war again. Everything seems to revolve around the obliteration of mankind.
But it wasn't that around the time of, I mean, it wasn't at the time of JFK, but there was always that particular point in,
Oh yeah,
right, you know.
He actually turned around and said in an interview, he said a lot of stories. I'm writing around a time now where we've got bunkers that we can go into because we're always at the forefront of war, and we know that the next world war is going to be at the nuclear level.
Yeah.
So he knew this, and that's why this story is like everything's obliterated by a nuclear bomb. You know, it's a nuclear explosion. Whether he thinks a nuclear explosion could go around the whole circumference of the planet, I don't know. But obviously, what happened was that all the missiles were launched and all of them hit at the same time. And
I mean, don't forget as well, the fallout to kill him eventually. So,
oh yeah.
There'd be no food after a while. So.
Oh yeah, he'd come out of that vault and it'd have been obliterated. But I mean, this is where I'm saying you can be hypercritical about a story, but it's not about that. It's the story, really. I mean, it's the ending that I like the most. So, time enough at last. I've definitely got time for that story, and we've got a comment on it. I think that's Average Cracker or AVG Cracker. It's got their Average Cracker. Burgess Meredith was the best reoccurring actor in the series. Great devil, great strongman, and great loner. Yeah. Burgess Meredith, fantastic actor. He was a well-known actor, though, before even the Twilight Zone. Some of these actors that we're going to be talking about that are in these stories are first-time showings. Burgess Meredith was already an established actor. I believe there's a story that he kept telling and said that even after being in Rocky, the one story that the one thing that fans would want him to do whenever they approached him was would be wanting to talk about the Twilight Zone, which he never really understood. What do you want to talk about that show for? That was in the 50s. You know, he couldn't understand why people didn't want to talk about the Penguin or talk about Mick from Rocky. They wanted to talk about this funny little man in an episode that he did back in 1959. So, you know, just shows you the power of a character and a story, really, is what I look at it from that.
And the story,
yeah. So that was time enough at last. Just bear with me because I've got to get caught up. Because the next one is Perchance to Dream, but I've got to start opening a few of these because I'm opening them up in a few instances, if you see what I mean.
Charles Beaumont.
So get rid of 16mm, and time enough at last, Right, so we're now on Perchance to Dream. So this is the synopsis of the story. Edward Hall has a bad heart and a terrible problem. Desperate, he barges into the office of Dr. Rathman, a psychiatrist, and explains that each night he's been dreaming in chapters, as in movie serial. The setting is always the same, an amusement park in which Maya, an alluring carnival dancer, entices him into the funhouse and onto a roller coaster with the intention of scaring him to death. He knows if he goes to sleep again, he'll suffer a fatal heart attack, and yet if he stays awake much longer, He feels sure his heart won't stand the strain. Whatever choice Hall makes, he's brought a one-way ticket into the Twilight Zone. Quite an interesting story, isn't it? So the opening narration is 12 o'clock noon, an ordinary scene, an ordinary city, lunchtime for thousands of ordinary people. To most of them, this hour will be a rest, a pleasant break in the day's routine. To most, but not all. To Edward Hall, time is an enemy. The hour has come, and the hour to come is a matter of life and death. Christ, there's hardly anything to read in this story. So I'll just read from around about halfway down. Realizing that Rathman can't help him, Hall starts to go, but stops when he realizes that the doctor's receptionist, Miss Thomas, is a dead ringer for Mayor, the girl in his dreams. Terrified, Hall runs into Rathman's office and jumps out of the window to his death. Rathman calls Miss Thomas into the office, where Hall lies on the couch, his eyes closed. Rathman tells Miss Thomas that Hall came in, lay down, immediately fell asleep, and then a few minutes later, he let out a scream and died. That's the story. And the closing narration is, they say a dream takes only a second or so, and yet in that second, a man can live a lifetime. He can suffer and die. And who's to say which is the greater reality, the one we know or the one in the dreams between heaven, the sky, and earth? In it, the Twilight Zone. Yeah. This one is all about reality, isn't it? And dreams. This one is all about a man that thinks he's been having a recurring dream. All he's actually done is walk into an office, sat on the couch, fell asleep, drifted, dreamt a whole reality for himself, and then basically thought when he woke up what is true, what is not true, and chucked himself out the window, not knowing what is true and what isn't true. Interesting story. Perchance to Dream got an 8. In fact, what's your thoughts on this one?
Again, this was another one that I ain't too wise about. I can remember parts of it, but just by you reading it, I can remember it, but not something I connected with, to be honest. I remember the girl. I remember the girl, and I remember him going through the carnival. I can remember it, but nothing that really gripped me. And it was the first story that wasn't by Rod Serling, wasn't it? Charles Beaumont.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Not
very,
one.
Very first story. In fact, the next couple of stories are all going to be Rod Serling again. So
yeah, I mean, you remember it more than what I do. I can't say it was one of my favourites.
No, I don't remember this one too much. I mean, reading the synopsis, I go, oh yeah, right. But then the synopsis is so small. It's a very, very short story. It's an incredibly short story. At the end of the day, it's a man that thinks things are real, and then basically it's the secretary that reads out what exactly has happened, which is a man just stormed in, went onto the couch, fell asleep. When he woke up, he jumped himself out the window. That's all she knows.
Yeah, and I was thinking at one point it was like that film Dreamscape. I thought it was more or less the same thing, but obviously not. Yeah, that's probably one of the ones that really didn't hit home with me, because obviously it's another one that I don't remember too well.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, there's nothing really bad about it. I just don't think there's much in it. I mean, my particular score for this one, Perchance to Dream, I put a 6.
Yeah, that's
I think the reason for it though is it was an age when I saw it. When I originally saw it, I just didn't gel with it because I didn't really get any of the parts, the heart attack part of it, and all of this sort of stuff. I don't know when I watched this the first time what a heart attack means. You know what I mean? It was like, I know it's a medical thing, but I also know that people live from them. So what's if the peril is not known by the person that's watching it, then of course the story can't be a strong one. That's what I think was probably the sticky point with this one, where I can always get the fantasy, up in space, all of this 9 million miles away, all of that sort of stuff. traveling back home, all of this sort of stuff, because I was on car trips that took hours to get home and all of this sort of stuff. I know these things. This one, at the time of watching it, I'd never been close to death.
Yeah, it would have probably worked better as a dreamscape type.
Yeah. Also, I think I've never not known whether I was dreaming or not. I've never been to the point where I've woken up and gone, "Am I in the dream now or am I awake?" You know what I mean? I've never woken up and gone, "Oh, can't tell if I'm dreaming or not."
Yeah. I understand what you mean. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's one of those ones that's a little bit hard for me to sort of like tack, really, especially if you're younger. I think if you're younger, you just wouldn't get that story.
Yeah. And it's strange, and it's the first non-Sterling story, and it's
yeah. But then again, I also don't know when that was written. For all I know, that was written very early. They were handed in, and it's just a shooting script. I've no idea.
Yeah, that's true.
So the next one is Judgment Night, which, by the way, fandom give a 10.
Oh,
so you know. Right, here we go. So this is the synopsis for Judgment Night. An unseen, unfriendly periscope keeps a steely watch over the SS Queen of Glasgow as fog and sea whip across the freighter's docks. On board the Glasgow, a German passenger, Karl Lancer, wanders about in confusion as the boat rocks to and fro in the black night. He doesn't know how to get aboard or what he's doing there, but strangely, all the passengers are familiar with the only thing Karl Lancer knows for certain is that at 1:15 a.m. something horrible is going to happen. Suddenly, a Nazi U-boat surfaces. Lancer zooms in on the sub with his binoculars and begins to understand a horrible truth about himself, the SS Queen of Glasgow, and the terrible reality that lies ahead on this raw, ugly night. That's the story. Price the narration, it goes on for a long time and all. Here we go. Her name is SS Queen of Glasgow. Her registry, British. Gross tonnage 5,000. Age undeterminate. At this moment, she's one day out of Liverpool. Her destination, New York. Duly recorded on the ship's log is the sailing time, course of destination, weather conditions, temperature, longitude, and latitude. But what is never recorded is the fear that washes over a deck like fog and ocean spray. Fear like the throbbing strokes of engine pistons, each like a heartbeat, parceling out of every hour into breathless minutes of watching, waiting, and dreading. The year is 1942, and this particular ship has lost its convoy. It travels alone like an aged blind thing, gaping through the unfriendly dark, staked by unseen periscopes of steel killers. Yes, the Queen of Glasgow is a frightened ship, and she carries with her a premonition of death. Know this one?
I remember it. It's from what I seem to gather, if I remember correctly, it's like a.
No, I'm just saying. Do you know this one? Because I haven't finished the thing with the closing narration and everything else. Do you know this one?
I remember it. Yeah.
So it just basically says here. Sometime later, Captain Lancer is in his cabin aboard the U-boat regarding the night's kill. His second in command, Lieutenant Mueller, is deeply troubled by what the crew of the boat has done. Not warning the people on board the ship before firing upon them, and wonders if we are all damned now. Lancer dismissively says he is sure the British Admiralty think so, but Mueller clarifies that he meant damned in the eyes of God. Despite Lancer's skepticism and sarcasm, Mueller grows more convinced that the crew of the U-boat may one day answer for their crime by reliving the act for all eternity. Granting his own private hell as the man who ordered the massacre, the former U-boat commander rematerializes on the deck of the ship and the nightmare begins again. That's the story. The closing narration is the SS Queen of Glasgow heading for New York, and the time is 1942. For one man, it is always 1942, and this man will ride the ghost ship every night for eternity. This is what is meant by paying the fiddler. This is the comeuppance awaiting every man when the ledger of his life is opened and examined, the tally made, and then the reward of the penalty paid. In the case of Karl Lancer, former Captain Lieutenant, Navy of the Third Reich, this is the penalty. This is the justice meted out. This is Judgment Night in the Twilight Zone. Yeah, pretty strong story, this one. This is a ghost story, basically.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's basically, this story is a time lock in it of an event that's already happened.
Yeah.
That's what I pick up. And it's like, well, it's basically that and Groundhog Day all mixed up into one. There's nothing more to say, is there really? That just you play the story out, and it's just an event that's already happened, and then it time locks and starts again. And every time it happens, he seems to, obviously remember. He seems to think he knows them. Well, obviously, the recurring thing, it just, there ain't really much more to say, is there?
I mean, fandom give it a 10.
No,
I give it an 8. I like ghost stories, but ghost stories to me, once I know sort of a little bit, I just go, yeah, they're all right, and I like watching them, and I watch them back, but they're not like fantasy and space and all of that sort of stuff. So it's nice. It's sort of like reminded me a little bit, and this is very, very loosely a Doctor Who episode where it was in the John Pertwee era, where there was that ship that was trapped in that traveling. It was Carnival of Monsters. It was where the ship was trapped, and they were just going around in a loop. They didn't know what the hell was going on. There was all these monsters and everything around. That's it. This is similar in the fact that they're in a time loop. It's a ghost story.
So basically, a lot of other series have copied this into present day as well, haven't they? The time lock situation.
So I think what people are giving it a 10 for is the fact that A, it's a ghost story, and B, it's well acted. It probably looks good as well for 650,000. At the end of the day, you're talking about a boat. You're also talking about a U-boat. 2 independently different boats with a cast, and I dare say it looked really quite good, and it looked very much like it, like not the real thing, but very, very strong, very, like set up really well is what I'm trying to say, and shot well. So, who am I to say that they're wrong? For me, it's not a 10.
It's a 7
stratosphere. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
We've got Stephen, by the way, who you've been speaking to all day today, I think, has commented. Look, he's put, good evening, Dan and Denny. I bought season 1 for a £5 today and have so far watched Where Is Everybody. I'm enjoying listening to your reviews of the rest of the series. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it. Definitely.
I'm hoping other people are. I know this is probably a bit dry. I couldn't think of any other way to discuss it, really, because I thought, based by the titles, people wouldn't recognize what they all are, because if somebody read out Judgment Night to me, I'd think, is that a courtroom? What? Wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Don't know until you start reading out what it is. So I couldn't think of any other way to do it. I suppose we could have split it into individual episodes and just talked about one episode and did this 36 times. But that's all I could think of, to be quite honest. So I think this is the only way of doing it, really, other than through a podcast method.
Yeah, there's no other way you can do it.
So we're moving on, and so just to let you know, it's 9:45. We'll keep going until my throat can't take it anymore.
Yeah. Well, we're on 11 of 36, and so.
Well, if we get to 20, it'd be good.
Yeah.
So anyway, the next one is called "And When the Sky Was Opened," which, by the way, fandom gave 10 out of 10 again. I say dubious, whatever you want. But here's the story synopsis. During man's first flight into space, the X-20 disappears from radar, then crashes in the desert. Major Gart is laid up with a broken leg, but Colonel Harrington and Forbes go out for a night of revelry. Suddenly, getting a strange feeling, Harrington calls his parents and finds they have no son. Abruptly, he disappears, but no one but Forbes remembers him. Forbes is desperate to find out what's going on, for whatever yanked Harrington away may not be satisfied with just one. That's the synopsis of the story. The narration. Her name is X-20. Her type, an experimental interceptor. Recent history, a crash landing in the Mojave Desert, about a 31-hour flight, 900 miles into space. Incidental data, the ship with the man who flew her disappeared from the radar screen for 24 hours, but the shrouds that cover mysteries are not always made out of tarpaulin, as this man will soon find out on the other side of the hospital door. Do you remember this one? So just before I get to the narration and the...
Yes, I do remember this one. Rod Tyler. I remember Rod Tyler was in this.
So the end comment is, having heard Forbes' story, Gart insists that he never knew any man named Harrington. Gart is despondent and also desperate. He too begins to feel as Harrington had, that he is no longer part of this world. When he looks into the mirror, he sees he has no reflection. Forbes snaps and flees the room. Gart runs after him, but does not see the astronaut in the hallway or anywhere else. Forbes has mysteriously disappeared too, and none of the hospital staff remember him. After getting back into bed, Gart notices the newspaper now says lone spaceman, having only his picture on it. Gort now realizes that Forbes was right and that the same fate awaits him. The episode ends with hospital staff entering Gart's room, seeing no sign that anyone has been using it. The closing narration. Once upon a time, there was a man named Harrington, a man named Forbes, a man named Gart. They used to exist, but don't anymore. Someone or something took them somewhere. At least they are no longer a part of the memory of man. And as the X-20 is supposed to be housed here in the hangar, this too does not exist. And if any of you have any questions concerning an aircraft and three men who flew her, speak softly of them, and only in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Nice closing remark. At the end of the day, I've already told you what the fans give it a 10. I gave this one a 9. I like it. I like the story. It's a space one again. It only got 9 because 8 I thought was too low. Really.
Well, I was going to say I was going to give it an 8, but it's a fantastic story. Obviously, there's the 3 astronauts that come back, and they all disappear one at a time, and nobody but Rod Tyler's character knows where they've gone. You know, he said, "Well, where's such and
Gart,
such?"
I mean, Gart.
Gart is he's the only one that knows that they're all disappearing. Eventually, he disappears, and the plane disappears, and that it's as though they didn't even exist. It's like that from that television series Nowhere Man. You know, he was with his wife 1 minute, and then nobody knew who he was. Fantastic story, but I'm trying to find. Did they explain where they was disappearing to, or was that?
No, it's like I said. That's pretty much it. And I must admit, that's where it's really well acted, and it's science fiction.
Yes.
And it's about a ship, and the whole mystery of they're going and they're disappearing and all of this sort of stuff. It didn't matter. There was a bit of a damp squib of an ending. I thought to myself, it's quite good. This I'll probably understand it one day and then put it to bed. You know what I mean? Coming back to it and still don't understand what the hell's really going on with it. It's why I said I think 8 was just a little bit too low when you consider what my other scores were. So I gave it a 9 because it's got a science fiction bent rather than a ghost bent or a bloke coming in and selling you wares and all of that sort of stuff, or I'm cheating death and all of this sort of stuff. Just because I don't understand it doesn't mean that somebody can't explain it to me later on.
Well, does
That's
it?
what I was feeling. So.
To be honest, though, does it need an explanation?
No, like I
Does it
said,
need, he knows I was disappeared until eventually he disappears, and it's as though none of them was even there or existed.
yeah.
So the obviously the plot is something happened when I was in space, but you'll never know.
Very true. So I'm in total bar with you. I think if it's an 8 or a 9, it doesn't really matter. We're in the ballpark of what we all both think on that one, so that's pretty good. Stephen just continues. Just by the way, he's put. I've only ever watched Twilight Zone the movie, which I enjoyed. It was totally overshadowed by the 3 deaths of the helicopter crash, of course. Yeah, the movie has obviously got a massive amount of baggage. I still thought it was a pretty good story. It's obviously got a fantastic score. Jerry Goldsmith, what can I say? Thumbs up. Yeah, it's got different directors doing different segments, and unfortunately, a lot of baggage around deaths on set. What can we say about it? It was in court for years. Nobody really came away unscathed from it all, and I think that's probably the reason why you'll never probably see another Twilight Zone movie, not in my lifetime, probably. It's too much stigmatism around it. Nobody, it's
take that away from it though. I thought the film was fantastic. I just love the film on every level. I loved all.
Apparently, Leonardo DiCaprio wants to direct a Twilight Zone movie. Hey, why not? Do so. If you can get the backers to do it, why not? But when you even had Steven Spielberg and all of that around you the last time, and Joe Dante, and nobody's made a film since.
Yeah, heavyweights there. Yeah.
I think that might be more to do with the movie houses turning around saying we ain't going to give you any money on that. Like I say, Twilight Zone is one of those weird stories. Weird series. I always think it's the best series that's ever been produced, but it's got baggage around it. It's like people are scared to try and make another Twilight Zone. There is also the fact you've got the movie that failed. You've got series ones when they get to the end, they're contemplating should we do a series 2, all of this sort of stuff. It's almost like Star Trek all over again. Just every time you try and do something with the Twilight Zone name, something goes wrong. Yeah. And there is always that insecurity at the end of saying, should we continue or have another season, or should we just end it here and go, there we are, that was another one. Because apart from the color series of the 80s, even the early 2000 one didn't go very far.
No, Forrest Whitaker wasn't it? One season.
So there was 3 seasons of the color one, if I remember rightly.
Yes. Yes, there was, yeah.
Because they were in colored boxes with the colored writing, so they were blue, orange, and I forgot what the other one was. Purple, was it?
Green.
Oh, green, is it? Yeah.
So I'm just looking at
so that one was semi-successful.
Yeah.
And then you've had no success since.
Yeah.
So that was when the sky was open. So we're getting now to what you need. Okay. Which got a 5.
A 5.
In fandom, 5. This one got. Like I said, there's nothing below a 2. This is the lowest scoring one for Rod Serling in this season. So, we'll read this out. It says, Pedot is an enigmatic sidewalk peddler with the uncanny ability to give people the item they will soon desperately need, even though they'll need it. He gives Lefty, a washed-up ball player, a ticket to Scranton moments before Lefty gets a call offering him a coaching job in Scranton. Fred Renhard, a violent, bitter failure of a man, demands Pedot give him what he needs. Frightened, Pedot produces a pair of scissors. Renard is mystified until a hotel elevator door closes on his tie and scissors. Proves very handy, but Renard wants much, much more. That's the synopsis of the tale. Opening narration. You're looking at Mr. Fred Renard, who carries on his shoulder a chip the size of the national debt. This is a sour man, a friendless man, a lonely man, a grasping, compulsive, nervous man. This is a man who has lived 36 undistinguished, meaningless, pointless, failure-laden years, and who at this moment looks for an escape, any way, anything, any body to get out of the rut. And this little man is just what Mr. Renford has been waiting for. That's the story. The closing narration, the closing synopsis says Renard continues menacing Pedant for more. Pedant gives him a pair of new shoes when a car suddenly heads directly towards Renard. He tries to run, but the new leather soles are so slippery he cannot escape on the wet sidewalk. He is struck and killed by the passing car. The shoes, Pedant explains to Renard's corpse, were what Pedant needed because he foresaw that Renard would eventually kill him. At the end of the episode, the peddler gives a couple a comb, which they use to groom themselves just before they are photographed as witnesses for a newspaper story covering the hit and run accident that killed Fred Renard. Closing narration, street scene, night traffic, accident. Victim named Fred Renard, gentleman with a sour face to whom contentment comes with difficulty. Fred Renard, who took all that was needed in the Twilight Zone. So yeah, another one of those stories of bloke peddling, a character that's either likable or not likable. In this case, not likable. Thoughts on this one?
So I'm struggling with this one. Is this the one where they're in an apartment and the was it not the not butler or a waiter walks into the room and starts taking the stuff? Oh, now that's another story in it.
That's another story.
No, I ain't too hot on this one. I can remember it, but very vaguely.
Yeah, it's not a particularly brilliant story. It's exactly sort of like as I read out, really. It's a peddler story. It's one of those ones where you've got a not likable person, a person that witnesses that this guy can give you what you need. He therefore wants more and more and more.
Oh, yes. Yeah, he keeps bullying him for more stuff, doesn't he, if I remember?
And at the end of the day, he gets exactly what what he needed, which is his comeuppance. He gives him a pair of shoes that are too slippery. There's a hit and run. And he still goes around peddling his needs because he gives 2 eyewitnesses a comb because they're going to have their picture taken and all sorts of stuff. It's just like it's a manipulation story, which is it's another one that's fun. This one though, because the person was never likable from the very beginning. So when you saw him get his comeuppance, you went, yeah.
So basically, you give him what he needed at that particular point.
You know what I mean? He gave us all what we needed. So, as far as I'm concerned, I thought it was quite a good story.
I remember it now. I remember.
So what you need got a 5. I think that's hard.
A 7, I'd say, on that one.
Yeah, it's a 6 or a 7 from me. Probably more 6 than 7 because it's a story that I've seen already being done. Another person turning up, giving you gifts or giving you, or peddling your soul or peddling, what I mean, an ointment or peddling. At the end of the day, this is like, how many times are you going to peddle this bloody bloke who's just going to give out all this stuff? You know what I mean? I mean, I'm scared now to look around the corner and wonder whether this bloke's the devil, the angel, or whatever it was. You could suddenly start becoming paranoid about it all if you think about it. But it was an okayish told story. It's definitely not a 5. Jesus Christ.
No.
So definitely not. So the next one is The Four of Us Are Dying. But before that, we've got some comments because Josh from Through the Lens is on. Look, hey lads, how are you?
Hello, Josh.
He's put in watching A Quiet Place Day 1 right now, which I bought for 4K earlier. The transfer is weird, but the film is great. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. We're talking about the Twilight Zone, Josh. But we hope you come back later or whatever it is after watching A Quiet Place. I love that film. I thought it was brilliant. It's nowhere near as good as the first A Quiet Place, but I mean, it's a good story. As prequels go, it's actually quite a good one because many prequels are pretty shit, to be quite honest. Going back before the main story, and especially if years and years and years have gone by. But anyway, what will we do? What you need? It's The Four of Us Are Dying, isn't it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're just going to be moving on a little bit, Josh. So we've got the synopsis here. Arch Hammer is a penny anti-con man with a unique talent. He can change his face to look exactly like the man he's seen in photographs. Using his skill, he impersonates a dead trumpet player in order to seduce the man's girlfriend, then duplicates a murdered hood to extort money from a gangster who had him killed. Later, to elude some pursuers, he imitates the face of a boxer from a weathered fight poster. But Hammer hasn't counted out on the fact that wearing other people's faces can lead to walking in their shoes. Yeah, we know where this one's going. Even I, just reading that out, know where this is going. So the narration goes, his name is Arch Hammer, and he's 36 years old. He has been a salesman, a dispatcher, a truck driver, a con man, a bookie, and a part-time bartender. This is a cheap man, a nickel and dime man, with a cheapness that goes past the suit and shirt. A cheapness of mind, a cheapness of taste, a tiny little shine on the seat of his conscience, and a dark room squint at a world whose sunrise has never gotten through to him. But Mr. Hammer has a talent discovered at a very early age. This much he does have. He can make his face change. He can twitch a muscle, move a jaw, concentrate on the cost of his eyes, and he can change his face. He can change it into anything he wants. Mr. Archie Hammer, jack of all trades, has just checked in at 38 at night with 2 bags, some newspaper clippings, a most odd talent, and a master plan to destroy some lives. Yeah, I mean, I know where this one is going. If I remember rightly, he captures the face of a person that he didn't really want to walk in the shoes of because that person owed money or something and he dies or gets killed or something, if I remember rightly. So the last line of the story goes, but on the street, he again bumps into Marshak's father, who puts a gun on him. Hammer tries to show the old man he is not who he thinks he is, but before he can concentrate and change, the old man shoots him. As Hammer lies dying, his face shifts from one person to another until he dies wearing his own face. Yeah, that's what I thought. You don't want to walk in someone's shoes when you've basically got somebody coming after you that wants to kill you. So the closing narration is, he was Arch Hammer, a cheap little man who just checked in. He was Johnny Foster, who played a trumpet and was loved beyond words. He was Virgil Starling with money in his pocket. He was Andy Marshak, who got some of his agony back on a sidewalk in front of a cheap hotel. Hammer, Foster, Sterling, Marshak, and all 4 of them are dying. There you go. What was your thought on this one?
Bit predictable.
Yeah.
It was quite obvious that towards the end of the show, the end of the particular episode, that he was obviously going to take somebody's face that wasn't, was
I
out to
suppose.
He took the face of a gangster, didn't he?
Yeah.
Not really a strong one. I do remember it, not really a strong one. It's
It
probably
got 9 in fandom, 9 out of 10. To me, it was an 8. I like the idea of a man who can change his face. Well, that was quite good. Again, it's one that's sort of like, you're gonna try this trick once too often. is what I was
Yeah.
getting at with
It's
this. And he
basically
did
the same, isn't it? Going once to the well, once too often.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd again not one I remember very much. I do remember it, but not really that I want to, keep on seeing it. I'd say about a 6 for myself.
Yeah, 6.
Hmm.
Okay. A little bit low for me, but that's not saying anything bad. I mean, like I said, it's each to their own. Trivia. I'm just reading to see whether there was anything about this. Through Hammer, Foster, Sterling, and Manchik has been planned to be performed by a sole actor using different makeup. The production crew timed the planned scene and noted his time wearing makeup would exceed that of him in front of the camera. So four actors were used instead. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Like I said, I what did I say? I think I said a 7, didn't I? Or an 8? 7, 8.
7.
Yeah. So I would say 4, but that to me, but 6 is, nothing to be sneezed at. To be quite honest, you can't all be winners. I suppose the next one's a winner for you. It's called Third from the Sun, not Third Rock from the Sun.
Well, this is the second one that'll get a 10 for me. This one.
Okie. By the way, fandom gave this a 7.
The reason I gave this 10.
We ain't got there yet.
Now the reason why
you give the reason at the end. We can't change the story now. Here we go. Right, opening the right. It says here opening narration. It hasn't even got an opening synopsis for this. Quitting time at the plant. Time for supper now. Time for families. Time for a cool drink on a porch. Time for the quiet rustle of leaf-laden trees that screen over the moon, and underneath it all, behind the eyes of the men, hanging invisible over the summer night, is a horror without words. For this is the stillness before the storm. This is the eve of the end. That's what the narration says. There's no synopsis for this one at all. Right. I'll have to read the beginning. It's got Will Strucker, a scientist who works at a military base run by the government, has been producing a great number of H-bombs in preparation for an imminent nuclear war. Sturker realizes that there is only one way to escape: steal an experimental top-secret spacecraft stored at the base. He plans to bring his co-worker Jerry Ryden along with their wives and the Sturker's daughter Jodie. The two plot for months, secretly supplying the ship and making arrangements for their departure. So the ending synopsis is: later that evening, the group has safely escaped their doomed planet and are on course. Ryden comments that he cannot believe that there is a planet full of people like themselves. Sturker smiles as he points out on the ship's viewer that the mysterious destination, 11 million miles away, the third planet from the sun, called Earth. So in other words, they weren't leaving Earth. They were heading for Earth, and it's an alien planet. Closing narration: behind a tiny ship heading into space is a doomed planet on the verge of suicide. Ahead lies a place called Earth, the third planet from the sun, and the William Stucker and the men and the women with him. It's the eve of the beginning in the Twilight Zone. So there we are. This one is called Third from the Sun. Like I said, it got a 7. Yours is a 10. Mine's a 9.
The reason I give it a 10, because all through the episode, you just assume you don't even think about it. You think you're on Earth. You just think you're on Earth, and it's the Planet of the Apes ending for me. It's an absolute banging ending. You just assume all the way through. It's just like a general brother Watson, and I'm trying to escape. It's a bit like when worlds collide, basically, sort of that.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that. But it's the ending that gives you the biggest payoff in this. Because I remember watching it for the very first time, and I just went, no way. I just assumed all the way through that they were on Earth. It's just absolute genius writing. Absolute genius. It could have told you, but why tell you? You just assumed. and the payoff was the ending for me.
Yeah, mine was a 9 because I didn't look at it like a Planet of the Apes ending. In fact, the reason I didn't look at it as a Planet of the Apes ending is because somebody had already told me what the actual ending was.
Oh, right.
So it sort of like ruins it for you. But I do have a funny feeling I probably would have guessed if I'm stark, put a gun to my head, tell the truth. I think I'd have got it because it's called Third from the Sun, and there are so many of these where the actual title gives it away. So it wasn't that they were leaving the third of the planet from the sun; they were heading for the third planet of the sun. And a lot of these, the actual statement is the end line, not the beginning line. You see what I mean? A lot of these stories, right? Well, it was actually somebody told me the actual. So I can't say for truthfully, yeah, I would have got it or not. I just knew, so I can only contemplate and say I think I'd have got it. But that's probably me being saying that I know myself, saying I think I know myself better than actually I do.
I've got to be honest. It was one of them Planet of the Apes moments for me. I was just gobsmacked.
Yeah. I wish it was for me, but it weren't.
Yeah, I mean, it's as though he threw the rod out, kept pulling me in, threw it out, just kept pulling me into the end, and I thought, wow, Mr. Sterling.
And I think a 9 is a good score. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I mean, I like it because it's a space story and all of that.
It's a space story. The ending on top of that, and it was a bit. Well, I say it's a bit different. It was like the nuclear war thing again. But no, it's definitely one of that, along with Time Enough at Last. It's one of my favourites of the season. Love it, absolutely love it.
So the next one is I Shot an Arrow into the Air,
right?
Which the public gave 10. Believe it or not. Again, written by Rod Serling. It's the 15th episode. Okay, no synopsis again. Opening narration. Her name is the Arrow One. She represents 4.5 years of planning, preparations, and training, and 1,000 years of science and mathematics, the projected dreams and hopes of not only a nation but a world. She is the first manned aircraft into space, and this is the countdown. The last 5 seconds before man shot an arrow into the air. There you are. That's where it gets the title from. I think we know what the beginning is. Look, the manned spacecraft with 8 crew members crash lands on what the astronauts believe to be an unknown asteroid. The last bit says Corrie later sees a sign for Reno and then sees telephone poles, which were what Pearson had attempted to draw before he died, realizing that they had in fact never left Earth and they had killed his partners for nothing. Corrie breaks down weeping. Yeah, so it's one of those stories where, never even left Earth and all of that sort of stuff. Closing narration, practical joke perpetrated by Mother Nature and a combination of improbable events. Practical joke wearing the trappings of a nightmare of terror and desperation. Small human drama played out in a desert 97 miles from Reno, Nevada, USA. Continent of North America, the Earth, and of course, the Twilight Zone. Yeah, this is one of those stories where if you put yourself in the middle of a desert, are you actually on another planet?
Yes.
Type story, which is why I didn't really need to read out the whole of the thing. I Shot an Arrow. It sounds very much like they'd spent millions and millions on this spacecraft and all of that sort of stuff. Doesn't matter what you did. They never actually left, and they basically were only, like 98 miles out of town or something in the middle of a desert. This one got a 10. What's your opinion on this one?
I will give this one an 8, pushing 9. To be honest, I enjoyed it. It was one of those that got me. It wasn't until the very last minute it sort of just went, and then because I think if I think right, there was infighting as one of the crew, and one left. That's if I remember right. Yeah. I love the part. Yeah, it's.
I give this a solid 9. This one. I liked it.
Yeah.
I like those ones really where the irony is they didn't go anywhere. You know what I mean? I like
And
those ones.
to be honest, that's followed up in so many different stories that followed this season as well. But done in a different way, but it's the same story. And that's the genius of the band. You know what I mean?
Oh
That's what
yeah,
I loved
yeah,
about Survey. You know,
definite.
brilliant. Yeah, that was it. That was one of my favourites. Yeah, it's a good one, that one.
I'm just trying to get caught up here, so hang on. I'm gonna open up this one now. Hang on. Open Lincoln New 17. Hang on. 18. 19. Right, so I've got 20 tabs open now. And we're moving to
It's out 16.
the hitchhiker. No, hang on.
That's
It's
right. Yeah, that's right.
the fever. Isn't it? Hang on.
Um,
No,
no,
it's the hitchhiker.
yeah.
Yeah, the hitchhiker. That's it. So the hitchhiker is the 16th episode of the Twilight Zone. The opening, there's no synopsis. They did the synopsis for all the beginning ones apart from now. So opening narration. Her name is Nan. Is it Nan or Non Adams? Nan Adams.
Nan Adams.
Nan, yeah. She's 27 years old. Her occupation, buyer at a New York department store. At present on vacation, driving cross country to Los Angeles, California from Manhattan. Bloody hell, that's a long way because I've done that once myself. Takes 5 days. Minor incident on Highway 11 in Pennsylvania, perhaps to be filed away under accidents you walk away from. But from this moment on, Nan Adams' campaign on a trip to California will be terror. Her route, fear. Her destination, quite unknown. Yeah. So quite a long part of the story here. It says the story begins with Nana Adams, whose vehicle gets a flat tire on the cross-country road trip from New York City to Los Angeles. The mechanic puts a spare tire on her car and directs her to the nearest town to fix it properly. Just before she leaves, Nan notices a strange-looking man hitchhiking. Unnerved, she drives away quickly as she continues her trip. Nan sees the same hitchhiker thumbing for a ride at several other points on her journey. So it ends at the bottom here. At this point, Nan realizes the truth. The hitchhiker is not a man who wants her to die, but is rather the angel of death, patiently and persistently waiting for her to realize that she has been dead all along. Nan returns to the car and sees the hitchhiker in her vanity mirror. I believe you're going my way, he inquires, almost friendly. Afterwards, a full shot of the inside of the car shows no one sitting in the car other than Nan. As Nan accepts her fate, Rod Serling narrates the final lines. Nan Adams, age 27. She was driving to California to Los Angeles. She didn't make it. There was a detour through the Twilight Zone. Yeah, I remember this one.
Yeah, I remember this one.
The fans give it a 9. I give it an 8.
7 pushing on 8 for me.
Yeah, it's just another one of those sort of like, I'm just sort of like just going to explain. It's just another one of those stories where you don't know whether this person is peddling something, whether this person is the devil, whether this person's an angel. But again, it's another person that sort of like is in the background, and you don't know what they are. You know what I mean? They could be the devil, the angel, or whatever. In this particular instance, she's dead. So it didn't matter what it was. She was going, it was somebody was picking her up to take her on her final destination to either heaven or hell. I didn't care which one it was. It was a bit misleading because it was called the hitchhiker. I must admit, it doesn't really tell you too much because this person was a hitchhiker, but it was just the thing was it's that she kept going further and further away, and he was always in front. That made me go, "That's a supernatural thing. There's no way that this person could have got further and further in front of her."
I think that's where it dawned on me. It's more like one of those. It's based around the same sort of premise as that film Soul Survivor, isn't it? Really, they're already dead, and they don't know it basically. Yeah,
I agree. So, like I said, it's an okay story. it's entertainingly sort of like well done, but at the end of the day, it was another character that was playing either an angel or the devil, and it couldn't have been anything else because the person kept going further and further ahead. That person would have had to have been in a jet. You know what I mean? To keep being that far forward, there was thumbing a lift, and she was driving past them all the time. So that's how I looked at that one. So that was the Hitchhiker. The next one is the Fever. Now this is one that I well familiar with. The Fever. This one is quite a simple tale, and I think it's a tale that's done quite well. Just so that you know, fandom give it a 7. I think that's low. I do personally, but I'll read out the opening narration for you first. Mr. and Mrs. Franklin Gibbs, 3 days and 2 nights, all expenses paid, at a Las Vegas hotel, won by the virtue of Mrs. Gibbs. Knack with a phrase, but unbeknownst to either Mr. or Mrs. Gibbs is the fact that there's a prize in their package neither of them expected nor bargained for. In just a moment, one of them will succumb to an illness worse than any virus can produce, a most inappropriate, deadly, life-shattering affliction known as the fever. Now, I don't even have to read the synopsis for this one because I know this one instantly by hand. In the fact that the very fact that it's Las Vegas and it's called Fever, gives you an indication that it's gambling. That's the whole point of this story. You've got a gambler that's won a all expenses paid holiday. The man of the house doesn't like gambling and is now thrust upon the fact that everybody is trying to get him to gamble. Doesn't matter where he looks, wherever he goes, somebody tries to make him gamble. Yes, in fact, a man comes up to him and gives him a silver dollar and says, "Put that in, I'm just giving it you." To which he pulls the handle and wins money. But of course, because he doesn't like gambling, he puts all the coins in his pocket, just thinks nothing of it, and goes away going, "Oh, I know the value of money. Somebody give me $1. I've got now $15 in my hand. I'm going to show you just how much I value the money. We're going to leave while the going's good. We didn't even have to spend any money to get this pot of cash," and goes off to the hotel room. The trouble is that he hears a voice, and it's quite a remarkable voice because it sounds metallic. It sounds like, well, I'm surprised at how it was done, but back then how they did it was they poured coins into a metal tray and had somebody narrate the lines, right? And it sounds metallic, but it's actually supposed to be the one-armed bandit machine talking to him to say, gamble on me, come and spend that money, and all of this sort of stuff. So he does go down there, he does put in $1, he gets hooked. The next moment you see the character, he's been gambling for 24 hours. He's had nothing to eat, he's had nothing to drink, and absolutely tired out. He goes back to his hotel room, and now he's hallucinating, isn't he? The hotel door is opening, and the one-armed bandit has followed him up the stairs and is heading towards him. His wife doesn't understand. What the hell? There's nothing here. There's nothing going on. All he sees is a fruit machine, a one-armed bandit coming towards him. He steps backwards, falls out the window, lands on the ground, dead. And the last closing point is all the people that were inside watching him gamble turning around and saying, he got a gist of the gambling real bad, this guy. I've never seen anybody lose it quite as bad as this guy did. And then the closing shot is a silver dollar that's basically rolls along the floor and it lands right by his hand. He's dead. It is a typical gambling story.
Yeah, based on addiction, isn't it? You can once it hits you, even the most.
So the closing narration is Mr. Franklin Gibbs, visitor to Las Vegas, who lost his money, his reason, and finally his life, all in an inanimate metal machine variously described as a one-armed bandit, a slot machine, or in Mr. Franklin Gibbs' words, a monster with a will of its own. For our purposes, we'll stick with the latter definition because we're in the Twilight Zone. And like I say, it's this one, where others have been about age and loneliness, and this one's about gambling. It's so pertinent for today, as far as I'm concerned. The Fever that got a 7, it's a solid 8 or 9 for me. It's not a 10. It's well acted. I do recognize the difficulty that they had with filming this, because in 1959 you couldn't have a fruit machine in California.
Oh, I didn't know.
No licenses, no gambling laws. So they couldn't travel to Las Vegas to do it. That would have cost too much money. So they had to go to the prop department and try and get all manner of means to get this looking like a hotel lobby with a load of fruit machines and everything in it. So I totally get 1959. This is a bloody difficult episode to do. And that's probably why I raised the stakes a little bit. Pun intended. In regards to giving this a higher figure, than 7. It's possibly even a 9, but I'm going to go with 8. It's a good story. It's pertinent today. So there you are, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
What's your opinion?
It's a definite 8. I mean, it is pertinent. Obviously, it's one of them things that it's still going on today. Even with all the education we've got nowadays, people are still gambling. People are still losing everything. And it's about, obviously, the story's about loss, isn't it? And he lost his life through the gambling. It just shows how much you can lose by losing your mind, basically. About the fever, about spending your money on an inanimate object for no reason. You see it every day, though, don't you? Somebody puts some money in, they win like £15, and they'll go back to the table and they just think, well, I was lucky. I could be lucky again. And that's the cycle that carries on and on and on. So,
for definite.
Yeah. It's just a simple story about addiction, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I like that particular story. I think that's quite a high. It's a Rod Serling story. We're moving into a story that's not done by Rod Serling. It's Richard Matheson next.
Oh, Richard Matheson, yeah.
Stevens just turned around and said, do you think the 1985-1989 Twilight Zone series is worth getting as well? Yes, it is. We were talking about it earlier, actually, Stephen. We were just saying that even the 2000 Twilight Zone is actually worth getting. It's just it only lasted 1 season. It's not fantastic. It's just that it's the last one of the good ones. When you consider the last 2 seasons of the Twilight Zone that's just gone, although I have an argument with Denny and say it weren't that bad, there was more bad than good, and that's where we do agree on. I just think some of the reenactments of some of the stories weren't that bad. It's just you look at it as being more bad than good, and good riddance to it, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
But I think you sometimes get, Denny, a little bit tied down with woke and an agenda. As far as I'm concerned, this had the backing of the Serling family. So as far as I'm concerned, he would have thought that that's what her dad would have wanted.
Well, I very much doubt he would. I'll be honest, I very much doubt he would.
I'll take it like this: A Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, changing the character to having a narrator in an MP3 player narrating the story to you, I think is very, very clever. Then the paranoia goes on, and he thinks that there's a bomb and everything going off and all of this sort of stuff, and it's the people in there. At the end of the day, they kill him because they crash land, and the only survivors there turn around and say, "You caused all of this. Your own paranoia."
Well,
I think that's quite good. At the end of Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, some have said, even though it's a quintessentially good episode, damp squib of an ending.
For me, you'll never beat. I mean, you're talking about Nightmare in 20,000 Feet. You'll never beat the movie version. John Lithgow was sensational.
Oh yeah, you can. The original.
No,
the original beats the movie version. Oh yeah, the original one beats the movie version.
No,
John Lithgow does a good performance, but
not for me. That's where we're going to differ on that one. Agree
that's
to
what
disagree.
I mean. So I mean, all I'm saying is it's quite a jump to actually rewrite A Nightmare at 20,000 Feet and actually come up with actually quite good story in a modern telling. It's like Spider-Man. How can you make Spider-Man work in the real world when everybody's got a mobile phone with a camera? I mean, he's swinging around. You're going to see him every bloody day.
Yeah.
Swinging around. You couldn't, but listen, in the 60s, nobody had a camera. It would have been such a highlight, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You see what I mean? And then why hasn't he got an earpiece under his mask so he can actually make a phone call? Why hasn't he got, I mean, all of this sort of stuff? He's a science major. You see what I mean? All I'm saying is it's a rewrite. And it's a rewrite that you have to do because you've got to tell it to a modern audience. And so the modern audience in this one is the delusion that it's the MP3 player that's telling them that all this is going on.
But just to answer Steve's question, yes, it is worth getting.
We've already said that.
Now, but I'm just saying.
I said that.
Yeah, but it is worth getting for one thing. I mean, one of my favourite episodes called Night of the Meek, and there was a fantastic remake on that one. What's his name out of South now? Who took the lead role on that?
Yeah, I know you mean. Who's Bert?
Yeah. It's all I say. Yeah, it's worth getting just for that.
Stephen, don't listen to him. He's leading you down the garden path. Just get all 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Don't have to listen to say get it for one episode when you've got 3 bloody box sets there to get. I mean, what you're turning around saying, which bloody episode is on which box set? We go down that route then. Just get all 3, Stephen. Don't listen to this silly sod. You just get all 3. Anyway, you've actually said here, listening to your reviews.
It's only sold in the box set anyway.
I think shows that great writing and acting beats big budgets and lots of special effects every time. Yeah. Now, carry on. Say something. Go on.
No, I'm just saying it's only sold in a box set anyway.
Can't you get them as individual 1, 2, and 3?
No.
Good on eBay.
No. The only ones I got was the box set.
Hang on. I've got them as individual. You can get them on eBay. It's just you got to look around.
No, I only got the box set.
Yeah, mine. That's why I said, what colours are they? Because they're individual box sets of season 1, 2, and 3. Just because you bought it in one doesn't mean that they didn't originally come out as one.
No, I only ever seen them as one.
Yeah, so when the other seasons came out and they were season 1 and you bought it, and season 2 you bought it and you got all the way to 5 and that's it. Season 5, you had 5 seasons. That's how those colour ones came out initially, and they were hard boxes. They were made of that soft sort of like can leave fingerprints type behind. Lovely. Oh yeah, when you open it up, it's gorgeous. Just letting you know. I'll show you one day, just to cheer you up, because you hadn't got a smile on your face. Smile, you miserable sod. Right. Next story: The Last Flight. Witness Flight Lieutenant William Terence Decker, Royal Flying Corps, returning from a patrol somewhere over France. The year is 1917. The problem is that the lieutenant is hopefully lost. Lieutenant Decker will soon discover that a man can be lost, not only in terms of maps and miles, but also in time. And time in this case can be measured in eternities. Know this one?
No.
Okay, it says here, Flight Lieutenant Terry Decker of the British Royal Flying Corps lands his World War I era Newport biplane on an American air base in France after flying through a strange cloud. He is immediately taken into custody and questioned by the American base commander, General Harper, and his Provost Marshal, Major Wilson. The 2 men asked Decker if he was trying to make a film or was part of an air show. Decker identifies himself and his squadron and informs the American officers that the day is March 5th, 1917. He is then informed that the day is not actually March 5th, 1917, but March 5th, 1959. And Decker realizes he has traveled 42 years into the future. The closing comment says Major Wilson is rebuked for letting Decker go. When Air Vice Marshal Mackay arrives, they immediately discuss what must have happened. Mackay says the Decker has saved his life, helping him fight the German planes that day, although initially he feared Decker had deserted him. Mackay says Decker returned from out of nowhere to shoot down 3 German planes before he was shot down himself. General Harper now shows Mackay the badge and personal effects of Decker, which had been confiscated, upon which Mackay informed him that they had never been returned by the Germans. When Mackay demanded to know what is going on, Major Wilson suggested that he sit down, calling him Old Lead Bottom, which was Decker's nickname for his old friend. What did you call me? Mackay asks immediately. No one outside his squadron knows that nickname. As we see the clouds outside the general's window. Closing narration. Dialogue from a play. Hamlet to Horatio. There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Dialogue from a play written long before man took to the skies. There are more things in heaven and earth and in the sky than perhaps can be dreamt of. And somewhere in between heaven, the sky, and the earth lies the Twilight Zone. What do you think of that particular story?
The Philadelphia experiment.
Yeah.
That's
got an 8 out of 10, Denny.
Yeah. I don't remember too much about it, but I remember the story. I remember him coming back and holding him, and then going back again. Nothing really to discuss much with this one. As I said, it's a bit like the Philadelphia experiment. That's what it reminded me of.
I gave it a 7. I know what you're talking about. I'd agree with that. Like I say, I'm actually wondering whether I've upset you because, like I said smile, and you didn't even smile. You just looked po-faced at me, so I had to read all that out, going, "Have I upset him or what?"
No.
Well, bloody smile then, miserable git. You go,
I'm
7. Oh, bloody hell! Yeah, don't. So a 7. It's one of those stories where, it's. I don't mind. I suppose back then I didn't really care too much about history. I see an old plane, I see it fly through a cloud, I see it land. I'm going, what are you on about when you're talking about? Are you doing some sort of like film crew thing and all of this sort of stuff? You've just flown across the Atlantic. I mean, how many people fly across the Atlantic with a film crew bloody filming you and doing all this sort of stuff? Surely you're talking about flying over fields and all that sort of stuff. You wouldn't fly over a bloody sea to do that. It didn't make much sense to me. And at the end, when it turned around and said, "Oh right, I see what they mean," right? So this person was this type of like a ghost or whatever it is, because it's the only way you'd have known that name. This person's traveled through time and all of this sort of stuff. I just turned around and went, convoluted mess nonsense, really. The only discerning thing about it is the cloud. So all I wanted to know was, where did this cloud come from?
Well, it was more like the Fantastic Journey, based on the Fantastic Journey's premise as well.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I just basically went, but I mean, it's still a good Twilight Zone, because at the end of the day, it's about fantasy. It's about taking your brain away from something that's possibly going. So I still think it's up there, but it's not a particularly highlight for me. The Last Flight. They gave it an 8, by the way.
Yeah, I think 7's a fair assessment.
Yeah, it's what I gave it. Steve's just turned around and said, may I like to suggest Thunderbirds for a future discussion stream? Possibly. At the rate we're going with this one, we'll be bloody here till for a while yet, but you never know.
Well, we're probably going into the Twilight Zone ourselves, to be fair.
Were you a big Thunderbirds fan?
Yes, massive.
You see, I wasn't a massive Thunderbirds fan. I was a Captain Scarlet fan.
Well, I like Captain Scarlet, but Thunderbirds was the highlight for me. I loved it.
I even like the theme tune of Captain Scarlet over Thunderbirds. I find Thunderbirds to be a quite overrated theme.
No.
Like I said, it's one that I'd do, but I wouldn't be like really bouncy about it. Do you know what I mean?
I'd have to re-watch it again if I was honest. It's been a long time since I've watched it, so my memories have faded a little bit.
See there, he's mentioned the next one, look, which I'm much more happy about. Look, I'm mainly a UFO fan. That's all too easy. All episodes are 10 out of 10. That's not true. If you were to skeptically look at them, Steve, I think you'll find that you might drop a few of those down to an 8 or even lower if you really, really do look at it with a very critical eye. But I know what you mean. If you're a big fan of a series and you've got only so many episodes, and you think everything's a 10, but then again, Twilight Zone is my favorite show of all time. I'm not giving them all 10s. You know what I mean? There are definitely some real not stinkers. You know what I mean? Ones that you could pull to bits in this day and age. And UFO was 1969, 1970. So, you could really pull it apart a little bit, like having a secret base on a Pinewood studio. You can probably, Anyway, we're talking about the Twilight Zone, so we're sort of like going off canter here a little bit. It's the Purple Testament, the next one. Sounds intriguing, doesn't it? The Purple Testament. Here we go. It's 1945 in the Philippines as a member of the war-weary U.S. infantry prepared for another confrontation with the Japanese Lieutenant Fitzgerald, lives in a private wartime hell of his very own. When he looks into the faces of his men prior to a battle, he sees a peculiar light on the faces of those who are about to die. Yes. Now this one does totally come. I mean, as soon as you read that out, you go, "Oh, I know which one we're talking about here." The opening narration. Infantry platoon, U.S. Army, Philippine Islands, 1945. These are the faces of the young men who fight as if some omniscient pointer had mixed a tube of oils that were at one time earth brown, dust grey, blood red, beard black, and fear yellow white. And these men were the models. For this is the province of combat, and these are the faces of war. So we all know what this one's going to be, don't we? These go off into war. He looks into their faces. A bloody light shines on them. They go off dead. Right? That's what happens to them. So he knows that they're about to die because of this unusual light. So the ending bit here says the sergeant sends the two off, telling the driver to be careful as they go. They have not completely checked the area for landmines. On the road ahead, as the soldiers are gathered around the camp at dusk, the sound of the explosion is heard in the distance. That's because he's looked at their faces. Closing narration from William Shakespeare, Richard III, a small excerpt. The line reads, "He has come to open the Purple Testament of bleeding war. The Lieutenant William Fitzgerald, company first platoon. The testament is closed. Lieutenant Fitzgerald has found the Twilight Zone." Yeah, I quite like this story.
Yeah.
The fans gave it 9 out of 10. I'd give it 9 out of 10.
Yeah. I'll give it to you.
I like this one. Then again, I've always been a bit of a soft spot for the ones where there's a guy that's got some power. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he can't really tell them, can he? Because it's a talent where you're going to turn around and you're not going to turn around and say to you, "By the way, mate, you're going to die. Just thought I'd let you know. A light shine on your face. What can you do?" He doesn't even. The light doesn't even tell you how you're going to die. Because it lights on your face.
I think he was doolally, wouldn't they? If he was to tell them they was going to, because he sees the light in the face. You know what I mean?
So it's one of those ones where I go, do you know what? That's a curse rather than a, rather than anything. So,
but doesn't it towards the end? He looks in the mirror and he sees the light shining in his own face, and he went on.
Yeah, and then he goes off in the car and it blows up.
Yeah.
That's how he knew that that's why the lieutenant was saying, "Oh, there's landmines out there." He knew full well he was heading into death.
Yeah.
I don't know whether he told the person that was next to him, because there was two that went off in the car. In the car. You know what I mean? But that's the end of that tale. So that one is the Purple Testament, and we're getting now to the elegy, and it's the 20th episode. So it's 11:15. We could continue if you wanted, but I don't think we'd get to 36 until about 12:30 or 1:00ish.
I think it would be better to split it into two that way, because you'd just be rushing it towards the end.
Yeah, and that's what I don't want to do. And the elegy is another space one, so this is going to be quite a nice one. By the way, Frank's just turned up, and he said, "Greetings. I never saw these, but I saw the new ones." Yeah, we were just talking about the new ones. Both me and Denny both agree it's not a great series. Denny hates it more than me. I find that there is good in some, but it's not great. I don't think they're going to make a third season. I think it stopped there. But nobody's actually ever said it was cancelled. Not that I know of. I'll have to re-look that up. It might well say there that it's been cancelled now. You know what I mean? I don't know. Do you know anything?
No. To be honest, I'd never care whether it carried on or whether it didn't.
I think you've made that clear to me now. Yeah.
It was the second episode that done me, and I thought, no.
Yeah, well, the first one was a nightmare. Was the nightmare one? Was it the second one? The people in the car, they're black, and they were, and they had the camera one, and the camera one that sort of like it's just 10 minutes ahead or 10 minutes back or something.
No, the second story was about the two black girls who found out they love each other. What that's got to do with the Twilight Zone, I have no idea.
I remember that one. The one I remember is the brother and sister driving in a car, and they take a camera, and there's racism as part of it. I think there was a police officer that keeps stopping them or something, but they find they've got this camera that takes time back.
No, I don't. Can't see.
Well, if you stop watching it after the one about the lovers or something, I'm not surprised you don't know that one. See what I mean? Hey, how can you turn around and say it was all totally bad if you stopped at the second episode? Bloody hell, there was another 8 to go.
I saw the episode. Well, they all went crazy in the house for some reason. Was it the men who went crazy?
Been a while since I said it. This is season 1 as well, isn't it? Anyway, let's read out this last one because we don't really. It's called the elegy, and it opens up with the opening dialogue from the amazing Rod Serling. The time is the day after tomorrow. The place. He's very poetry, isn't he? The place, a far corner of the universe. The cast of characters: 3 men lost amongst the stars. 3 men sharing the common urgency of all men lost. They're looking for home, and in a moment they'll find home. Not a home that is a place to be seen, but a strange, unexplainable experience to be felt. You know this one?
It's not coming to mind at the moment.
Okay, I'll read out the beginning bit of the story until you turn around and go, "Oh, I know you're talking about now." Right, episode summary. Running out of fuel, astronauts Myers, Webber, and Kirby land their spaceship on a remote asteroid in 2186. They find the place quite Earth-like, with buildings and people, but after looking around, begin to wonder where everyone is. The first place they come to is a farm where they can find no one. No one, that is, until they see a farmer gazing off into the distance. They approach him, tap him on the shoulder, and try talking to him, but realize he is nothing more than a statue. You know it now?
This one's not coming to mind, I'll be honest with you.
Okay, we'll get to the end. We'll get to the end. Suddenly, they realize that their drinks have been poisoned as the men are dying. Wiltshire, who are usually a robot that has been deactivated for about 200 years and only turns on for occasional duties such as cleaning, dusting, and performing minor maintenance on a few clocks, apologizes to them and explains that it's his job to ensure peace and tranquility at Happy Glades. He emphasizes that they are men, and where there are men, there can be no peace. Later, Wickshire reinstalls the embalmed astronauts in their ship, posing them at their posts as if they were indeed on their way home, which, just as they'd wished. Closing narration: Kirby, Webber, and Myers, three men lost. They shared a common wish, a simple one, really. They wanted to be aboard their ship, heading for home. And fate, a laughing fate, a practical jester with a smile that stretched across the stars, saw it as they got their wish. Just one reservation. Their wish came true, but only in the Twilight Zone.
Yes, I remember it. Yeah, it was like a zoo, wasn't it, that they set up?
Yeah, I thought a museum, to be quite honest. It's like they were always three astronauts that were in a remnants of a spacecraft, and there was this robot that sort of like cleaned up around the museum.
Yeah.
Basically put them back in their seats where they were in the museum.
Yeah. This one about story, actually.
Yeah, it's an okayish story. It's the last story before they went on hiatus for 4 months before they basically continued. What happened was they needed to get a green light to renew. CBS wouldn't renew. A bloke who was part of the people that sponsored them, I don't know if it was from Palmolive or whether it was Kraft General Foods, kept ringing up and saying, if I don't get the story, then none of my subscribers will get the story, so I'm pulling my money out. And he kept phoning up every day, 4 times a day. But in the same amount of phone calls he was making, the office was also getting the same amount of stories to say, we love this series and we want it to continue. So this carried on every day for 4 months, and in the end, he stopped phoning in. Apparently, the calls started to still continue in to say renew it. So in the end, the green light happened, and the rest of the stories, all 16 of them, got commissioned, and it resumed 4 months later. That's the story. So it was under cancellation by episode 20.
Wow.
Amazingly.
That's incredible.
And that's where I'm saying it's amazing how many stories we hear where cancellation is looming all the time without giving anything, the benefit. Anyway, Stephen Taylor's put, do you remember the episode that got banned for 50 years? Episode 151, The Encounter. Yeah. It's all over the book. It tells you about the banned episode. It was banned for race, I think. If I remember rightly, it's all over the book. It explains. If you type in Twilight Zone banned episodes, it will tell you this one was banned for 50 years. But it was only banned in America, not banned worldwide. Only the Americans, because that unfortunately that's what happens in America.
Yes.
Anyway, what do you give this story? Just to let you know, Elegy got 8.
Yeah.
I think that's quite a good score.
Yeah, probably 8. Yeah. It was something out the norm that probably nobody would have seen at that point on that particular episode, that story.
Yeah, I think it was probably because the dialogue was a bit stilted for me. It wasn't very interesting, and the robot didn't look very convincing. You know how it is when you're looking at things and you're going,
for 19.
It's not about the effects, but even that robot didn't really do it for me.
Yeah, 1960. Yeah.
Yeah, when you consider that Robbie the robot was still around at that point.
No, I suppose there isn't. Mind you, that's Disney money, though, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. So, 8. I'd give it 8.
Yeah, it's a good episode. Yeah, it was a good episode.
So we've done 20 episodes of 36 of season 1. I do know that it comes across a bit dry, but I've actually had fun sort of like reading it out. I'll tell you what, don't have to dry your throat out, and the writing's hard to read because I'm reading it up there and trying to do everything, and then look and try and bring up the next ones up. And I think I might do it. It might be easier to do it next time because I know what to expect, and I think I'd be a bit more prepared with possibly even using a, that device I've got where I can actually have my notes, without having to move the screen or anything. The only downside for the whole of the night is that upsetting comment that was made at the beginning. I hoped it wouldn't upset me, but unfortunately, this is the sort of thing that I've been talking about. I don't think that I'm a baby on a Sunday talking about heart attacks and all of this sort of stuff. They're if that's what the guy was trying to go, baby Delboy crying. I've got health issues. They're health issues that could kill me. I don't think any of that. And that's somebody that wanted to upset me, and in some ways he rattled me more than upset me, I suppose. But I won't mention it this blog. I won't mention it, in my blog. I'll try and forget about it because I think that's what they want. They want me to talk about it and then continue this on and on and on. But I don't understand what I've done so wrong that makes people say wicked, nasty things like that person did. What is it that I do so bad that causes them to keep antagonizing me? Do they find fun in this? I don't know.
But basically, their own limit, mate. At the end of the day, it's within themselves.
And I just sometimes feel so alone because I do know that I read out the comments where they say, "Oh no, we're totally behind you, Dal. We're totally behind you." But that's come out in this stream, and I don't see anything in the comments saying, "Oh, tell him to get stuffed, Del," or whatever it is. There's nothing there. It's almost like it never happened to you guys, but to me, I read it out. It was there, So I do feel a little bit alone. But with that, I don't want to end on a misery. We will convene and continue into the Twilight Zone season, the end. I hope people have enjoyed it. You know what I mean? I don't want people to go away going, "Oh, that was boring as load of rubbish that I've ever heard in my life." But I think the Twilight Zone is a difficult one to probably do on a season level with all the episodes and people not knowing what the episodes are. Do you know what I mean? You need to come in here probably knowing season one as well as we have done. And I've been watching the Twilight Zone the last week, familiarizing myself with certain ones. There are obviously certain ones I skipped past. Oh, I don't want to watch that one. I'll watch this next one. There's only so many hours in a week that you can actually do that with. So, Stephen's put in a couple of weeks it will be over and your new life can start. Best wishes to you, Del. Thank you, Stephen. Like I said, it's nice to get a little bit like that. It's affecting me a little bit, Stephen, but I'll try and chirp her up. I'll be a different person on Sunday. Do you know what I mean? Thursday night will become a distant, and I'd have been prepping my blog and just be, and I'd have done some more gaming streams and all of that sort of stuff, to boost me up. It's only the likes of Denny and people like that keep me smiling. So I just want to say thank you to all my friends for it all, and I'm sorry if it has come across like I'm a bit miserable tonight. It's not at all. I'm just a bit concerned about my mum.
Yeah, we know that.
I will say that. I mean, my mum is my life at the end of the day. Plus, the person right at the beginning that wanted to rattle me. What can I say? How bad a start can you have? But with that, Denny, please promote your channel and anything that you'd like to say about the Twilight Zone.
At the moment, my channel is
all of the people that are your fans and all of that sort of stuff.
Well, I'll be honest with you, my channels are just coming on complete hiatus at the moment. Work life is just it's it's just killing any time I've got. I'm just having a day and a half off just to recuperate. So I'm just resting. The one thing I do want to get heavy into, though, probably be seeing more of is like game restoration, magazines and game cover restorations. That's more. I enjoy that more now, to be honest. I mean, I still will do videos, but
you do that for yourself, Denny, or are you doing it for a particular thing? Because I looked at the other day at Lemon 64, and they've still got their old covers, and they could do with quite
yeah,
good
I
stuff.
mean,
And
I am looking at that.
I've even been to what was the other thing? Wiki, and they could do with some of theirs doing. But I don't know who uploads those, or whether you have to sign in as a member and then copy over the top of the ones that are there, or what.
Yeah. I
Those up there.
mean, Lemon, I suppose you'd have to ask the people at Lemon, but I know there's one called Malby Games. You can just upload whatever you want there, and they have a look at it and put it on if they think it worthy. And you get points based on what you upload, whether you put pictures up or game
That's
covers.
good, then.
And then you got Launchbox, they do some as well. So I shall be asking them if they want any. But yeah, that's when I can get round to it. But at the moment, my life it's just revolving, just finishing work. I mean, it's like this week. I've had this week off, and I've been out every day this week, just catching up on things that I've got to do. And tomorrow it's the same. I'm going to be out most of the day tomorrow. It won't be till Saturday morning I can sit down and watch a few of my discs, films and TV.
Actually, stay there a minute. I got a funny feeling. Bear with me. Oh no, it's all right. It's Ponder next, and then it's you that's going to give me a game. Just for I'd say, just to remind you, got to give me a game tonight because I can't do it tomorrow. But actually, it's Ponder to finish.
Oh, it's all right. Well, the one I'm going to give you is it's one on Steve's channel. Actually, you've already know it, but it's going to be a nice game. It's no, I wouldn't say it's easy, but at the end of the day,
he gave me a nice one today. Who knew? Who knew?
That's a good game. I enjoyed that one. To be fair,
yeah. I mean, he said, I'm going to be fair. I'm going to be nice to you today, and I'm going to give you a game that I think you'll like. I went, yeah, this is leading me down a false bloody route. I know exactly what you'll like, Steve, you miserable bastard. I bet you've come up with right horrible little game. And I ended up playing it for the first time and getting quite far in it. You saw the mistakes I was making, so it was not like I'd played it before. I was going, oh, have I got to put that off, and and all of this sort of stuff. Some of it was accidental. I found a solution to it. I was going, oh bloody hell, yeah! If I just go down there, I could just leave, can't I? I was looking about going over the top at one point. I was going,
but sometimes it's right in front of your face, though. Sometimes without realising that's that's where the practice comes in. But I mean, of all the practice I ever had on Matrix, I still had to save state every level because it's just impossible, that game. If anybody can do that,
Steve did me proud. So
I enjoyed that game today.
He's got to wait now 6 more people before he can go round to him to give me a right bastard of a game. Tough shit. So there you are. He's got to wait 6 working days before he can give me another game.
I'm going to be gentle with you on my next one, but it's a game which
that's all right. I've had some right stinkers though, just recently. Bloody hell, I had that Sigma 7 from you. Didn't I? And I had what was it? It was a right run of bloody bad ones. I was going, what the hell? People giving me? I was getting nowhere. It was like, wow, it's ridiculous. You all want to make my life miserable. That's all I was thinking. But I do know that that's the fun side of it all. When you see somebody suffer, it's like comedy gold. It's like Laurel and Hardy slipping on a banana skin. That's what you want.
Yeah, it's mind you, these 8-bit and 16-bit early games. That was
but I'll tell you the other thing that I liked about Steve is that he chose a system that I haven't been on, MSX.
Yeah.
So many have been going, I've got a Commodore 64 one for you, and I'm going, what again? With the odd Spectrum thrown in. You know what I mean? It's nice when you get the bit of obscurity. Like, I've got a ColecoVision one for you. Have you? I'd be going, what?
Well,
You know what I mean? That's not to say that I'm expecting people to now go basically totally outside their cushion and go, oh yeah, try this one. But it's just that how many have actually suggested a Vic-20 game? There's been one, isn't there?
Yes. Oh, there's been a couple. Oh, no, there's just been the one. Just been the one.
Yeah. See what I mean? No, what I'm saying is one person that's asked, and it's you.
Well, I can give it a Vic-20 game, but
No, I'm just letting you know. Is what I'm trying to say is that, you know, I mean, I suppose actually, I dread actually a Commodore 16 game. I'll put my line in the sand, right? That I dread a Commodore 16 game coming up, and I'll tell you the reason why. My friend had a Commodore 16. The Commodore 16 should have been a cheaper machine, but I know the Commodore 16 is superior to the VIC-20. But every time I see a Commodore 16 game, I keep thinking if the VIC-20 had 16K, I'd piss all over that game.
yeah.
Every time I look at it, I just go, I don't care how old the VIC-20 is, it pisses all over a 16K Commodore 16 game. And I just look at it like that. I look at Green Beret and I'm just going, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, after my little rummage today, I'm hoping I can put a few more games back into the Vic-20 game base. I think I've got some missing games.
And that chronologically gaming is brilliant. I mean, he hasn't done a VIC-20 now for a couple of days. But what did he have today? He had
He had Choplifter the other day, didn't he?
Eh?
He had Choplifter the other day.
Yeah, and I told him about that, saying, I don't know why you keep mentioning about memory, because I can tell you now that weren't done on an unexpanded VIC-20. I can tell you that now.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just the cartridge has got RAM in it. It's the reason it's got on there. You do not need memory expansion for this. Is that there weren't many people that were able to put in a memory expansion plus a cartridge. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but when it was sold in Britain, it might have been on cassette, and then it would have had to have said 8K of RAM needed.
That's right, yeah.
It worked like that. Anyway, Steve's just put, he's showing his colours here. Look, there's a Commodore 16 game next time then. See what I mean? He wants me to suffer, miserable bastard. Anyway, I better turn off the stream because we're not talking about the Twilight Zone anymore. We will be back. There will be a Twilight Zone, end of season 1. We will see whether we'll do a season 2, season 3, season 4, season 5. I'm pretty sure there will be. But I think we will go down the route of something different after we've done season 1. We might do UFO. We might do Thunderbirds. Who knows? We might go back and do the children's show. We haven't finished that off. Whatever happens is you ain't stopping us doing our discussions. That's for one thing. So we're staying strong on that. Our friendship's too strong for that. So there you are. So whoever wants to keep trolling me, keep going because I'm still around.
Yeah.
And with that, salute, and I'll let you say the final words.
Well, it's good night from me.
Oh, it's good night from him.
Good night.
Good night.
Oh, dear.
You know what? I can't end the stream.
Oh dear.
I've got to open it up in another browser. So there's another. Keep talking for a minute while I do it.
Oh, I love it when you say that because I don't know what to say.
You've got to be able to say it. Yeah. So you just have to bear with me a minute. This is that one of those things where I don't know what's going on with that.
We're still in the Twilight Zone.
There we go.